The girl felt great on a warm, sunny morning when birds chirped in the brightly glowing leaves from the sun. Other maids at this time were glad that the linen had finally run out and complained that their backs were numb. Another boasted that she had pumped up a little during these days, adding that their work was harder than blacksmithing. Then, feeling exhausted, they decided to take a short break, because if they returned immediately, they would again be overwhelmed with work. Then they noticed how Princess Grace, who was considered very beautiful in the empire, was passing by. The girls were interested in how happy the king was with a daughter, because she could wear the clothes she wanted. But Siana did not think that Grace was beautiful, noticing that her dresses were clearly not the right size, and they were a maximum of 20 kilograms. The girl explained that it was the same as dressing a baby piglet, and suspected that it was very painful for her to wear a corset now. There was a feeling that someone had forcibly wrapped the princess with a cable, and in this state she should also walk and smile. The maids wondered how she was able to determine all this, but she did not admit that a few months ago she herself was a princess. When she was born, her mother was queen and father was king, and she was little Princess Sina Aseland von Selite. Like any other princess, she thought she was lucky to have a life, but her mother died when she was only 10 years old. Her father decided to marry again to strengthen his kingdom, and Siana missed her mother very much and she was lonely. Her stepmother told her that on behalf of the late queen, she would do everything possible to make a worthy princess out of the girl. And when Ziana was getting an education, she was bullied a lot. Her stepmother thought she was too stupid for her age. The queen then stated that from now on, she would punish her with a whip for every mistake the princess made. Siana tried her best, but because of the corset and too heavy dress, she could not bow down to greet her stepmother properly. She felt that she was about to die, but she did not give up. But once again she failed to bow, and the queen considered it disobedience. She stated that the princess was very difficult, and stated that she had no right to call herself a princess, and that the king could not go to banquets through her. She also explained that this was all for the good of their kingdom, so the baby should not be angry and angry with her. The next moment she swung her whip at the girl but stopped as the king entered the room. The princess mentally begged him for help, but he said that there was nothing wrong with the queen's words when a child did not study well. Siana felt confused and betrayed at that moment. She could not believe that it was all her fault. She just wanted to be happy, but the girl didn't like being a princess anymore, and she wanted to leave. She dreamed of running away while remembering her mother, yet she had to endure everything until she was 18 years old. By then, their castle had fallen at the hands of another kingdom, and it was the conqueror of the entire continent. Soon they were visited by the same bloody prince, Rashid Lebizwan. He was the first prince of the Lebeziwan Empire. He stated that there was no response to the letter of appeal to surrender, so he came here in person. He then wondered if they would surrender to him, and Siana decided that this was her chance, because if they surrendered, they would not die. But the king said that he was not going to serve the lousy invader and demanded that they be killed right away. At the same moment, his head flew off his shoulders from the sword of Prince Rashid, who declared that they were the first who did not want to bow their heads. At the same time, he intended to spare them without killing anyone, and all this seemed so boring to him that it was not even surprising. The princess then noticed that he was heading towards her, but she did not want to die, as she was still a child. She could not believe that everything would end like this. And then she fell at his feet with pleas, begging him to help her, and that she would do anything. Rashid decided that she was ready to become his woman, but Siana said that she was far from all this, and that there was nothing feminine about her. She also added that she was no match for the first beauties of the kingdom, and although she looked fearless, she actually wanted to survive. After that, the girl explained that she was very healthy, knew how to embroider and make delicious, fragrant tea. After saying all this, the princess stated that she could be the perfect maid for the prince. Then she couldn't believe that she had said such absurd nonsense, and then she looked at the prince and noticed that he was very handsome. Everyone said that he was a warrior who had no equal on the continent, but Siana decided that he was just taking advantage of his charm. At this time, Rashid noticed that her face was round and soft, like a bun made only of wheat flour. Then he agreed that the princess should be a servant in the imperial palace, and then ordered her to be untied. The girl was glad that she was able to survive in this hell. Then she thanked the prince and introduced herself, giving her name. She also assured him that she would never forget his grace while he thought that he had chosen a cutie. So Siana became a servant in the imperial palace while she could fall into despair, wondering how she became so unhappy. But now, thanks to her, fresh bread was baked, clothes became clean, and the garden became even more beautiful. Previously, she had to wear a corset that stretched her entire body throughout the day and smile like a doll. Her life was completely different now, and Xian found it even more fun and much more comfortable to be a servant, which she thought was beautiful. Now the girl would like to be a maid all her life, and for the sake of cleanliness she often did even what she was not asked. The other maids thought she was trying to curry favor with the head maids and explained that she had to ask what to do first. A servant's apprentice named Jean was mostly dissatisfied and told Xiana that she was a slave from a defeated country anyway. She also explained that this girl would never become a maid of the main team and always treated her like garbage. Then another one named Choo Choo entered, who yelled at Jana for annoying those who did not work hard again instead of helping. She also threatened the screamer that if she continued to do so, she would inform the head maids. Then Jana agreed, but told Chooch that she could continue to have fun with these children who had nothing. Then she threw a bucket of water over and told Ziana that she could continue to do her favorite cleaning. Then everyone else fled, and the remaining Jean advised the newcomer that she should fight back. She explained that they only bothered her because she silently accepted everything, but Xiana had no idea that the others were bothering her in this way. After all, for the former princess, who had been bullied by the new queen all her life, such grumpiness seemed cute. Now the girl realized that they were showing disdain, and Choo Choo shared that, given her family, it would not be easy to fight back. She knew that she was the daughter of a respected family in the kingdom, and no matter what she did, she would definitely officially become a maid. Two other students also expect to get something from Jana, so they drag her everywhere. And so she does nothing, and hopes that she will be taken because of her origin, and Choo Choo was the same student as Siana. She has a strong and sturdy build, which is why she is one of the students who shows promise. She also has no cover due to her origins, so it is not certain that she will officially become a maid. Jana understood that Siana had nowhere else to go, but she somehow became a maid's apprentice. This meant that there was someone who helped her, and the princess understood that it was the emperor of this country. Or maybe because, forgetting about the honor of the princess, the girl bent down to the floor and begged for mercy. Siana thought that at that moment she seemed pathetic or ridiculous to Rashid, and he did not sympathize with her at all, but it was just his whim. But she could not admit all this to Jana, so she said that no one helped her. At this time, his personal guard named Sul came to the emperor and noticed him playing with his animals. The gentleman himself was very beautiful with his angelic appearance, which fascinated everyone who passed by. He fascinated even enemies on the battlefield. Sul grew up with him, so he knew it very well. Now he asked the guard how the girl was doing, and he reported that she was doing well. He also added that Ziana had not done physical labor before, so she was a little lost, but at the same time smart and a quick learner. Still, it would take time for her to become an official maid, and Sul wondered why Rashid was so worried about her. He didn't know himself and thought that he just felt sorry for this girl because he destroyed her country and killed her family. The guard was surprised because he had killed so many people, and it was not clear why he was thinking about it now. Then Sul asked the emperor to honestly admit that he just always liked such small, harmless creatures with large eyes. And it was true. Rashid, who is called the Blood Emperor, this cruel and handsome man simply adored animals. This shocked Sul every time he saw it, and the emperor admitted that Xian was indeed something like them. He also expressed his hope that she would become an official maid and be assigned to a good place. But Sul objected that it was impossible to turn an apprentice maid whose abilities had not been proven into a full-fledged maid. Rashid agreed with this and decided that they should test for themselves what she was capable of in order to find out if she had potential. The maids went to lunch, which was meatless today, but Siana said that it was not necessary to think about how to eat properly. She claimed that she could now eat as much as she wanted, but others thought that was her opinion because she was from another country. Siana also believed that it was not necessary to maintain a conversation in this way, so this place and position seemed to her just paradise. Jana even joked, asking how she could eat such garbage, and the girl realized that she was being bullied again. Siana thought that she should have burst into tears at such words, but made a straight face. Jana didn't understand what was wrong with this girl and why she thought everything was normal, claiming that it wouldn't make her cool. Choo Choo thought that since she was from another country, she should have bothered, and she yelled at the grumbler that she was constantly bullying a quiet person. However, Jana noticed that it was not the first time she had defended her, but reminded her that she was in charge here and that she should pay attention to the atmosphere. Then followed their verbal skirmish, which reminded Xian of the fight between a bear and a hyena. Then a servant's teacher named Lip came in and immediately asked what was going on, noticing that two students were fighting. The two immediately fell silent, and Lip told them not to cause trouble in front of her, no matter how hard they were going to fight. Then she announced that an official document had been sent from above, and the tea ceremony would take place in a few days. All the students, together with Lip, will serve the guests who come there, while it is important to observe strict etiquette and not to make mistakes. A maid from the main cast will also work with them, but the girls began to wonder who would be at the tea ceremony. They assumed that this was the wife of an honorary aristocrat or a beautiful princess from a neighboring country. But Lip explained that women will come to grow fruit for delivery to the palace. The taste of the fruit they have been growing for the palace for several years is simply delicious. And this tea ceremony will be held in order to express gratitude, and the training will take place in the morning before the tea party. Therefore, everyone needs to gather in the garden immediately after waking up, and Siana was very happy that she was appointed for this appointment. Only Jana was unhappy that she had to serve some aunts, and believed that this job was just for a newcomer. Then she teased that Siana wouldn't have made it to the appointment if she hadn't had to serve those ladies. At the same time, the former princess understood that those ladies were just the working class, so the maids were entrusted to serve them. There was no need to take care of this. Otherwise, official maids would have been sent to the reception, but it still seemed strange. The next morning, Lip began to teach the students tea etiquette, and above all, they should not forget that they were at the imperial palace. Girls must learn properly so as not to disgrace the honor of the imperial family. Chuchu was glad that although the official work had not yet begun, she had already been allowed to try herself as a maid. She stated that she would try her best, but was worried that her assertiveness and skills might be of different levels. Then she began to pour tea, and Lip corrected her, reminding her that the drops should not splash in different directions. Other students joked about calling her a muscular fool and saying that tea wasn't the beer her minor father drank. Chuchu was angry at the other students for such words, and she was also offended that she had been reprimanded by the teacher. Then it was Jana's turn to pour tea, and she did everything correctly and accurately, for which she received praise from the teacher. The girl was happy about this because she studied with a well-known etiquette teacher in the capital. Lip thought that Jean was not the right person to be an apprentice maid. It was also rumored that she would become the head maid and serve Her Majesty the Empress. Siana herself saw that she did well, while she believed that only for the first time and then at the level of a maid's apprentice. At a time when carefully selected maids made even the slightest mistake, the queen immediately punished them. These maids, in order to calm the irritated empress, poured and served tea more elegantly than any noble lady. And compared to what Siana had seen before, everyone here seemed clumsy and awkward. Now it was her turn to practice pouring tea, and that was enough for her now, because she was no longer a princess. Also, the girl did not want to stand out because of her past, and began to pour tea long and long while a little clumsy. Siana really wanted to stay in the palace, and she knew she had to be quiet to do so. After training in the afternoon, the students had to go to the designated places and do work that they could not do in the morning. It was cleaning the palace, lighting a fire, and washing dishes, but everyone coped with it. Then a snack was brought from the remains of bread, which was considered a delicacy of the trainee maids who starved every day. Siana was grateful, believing that it was worth working in the kitchen for this, and she was glad that they were sent here. Suddenly, she noticed that Chuchu was strange today and hardly spoke, and then she offered her something to eat. And she asked the former princess if it was difficult for her to be trained by maids. Siana explained that they did not fight much, and she admitted that she was even a little jealous of her. The princess remembered that during the tea lesson, Chuchu had been the most scolded today, and that was probably why she was so upset. This student had always been praised before, but today was the first time it had happened to her, and she took it too personally. As it turned out, this was also the first such test for Chuchu, and she admitted that Jana was right and she had never drunk tea. She also does not have any experience that could be useful in this, and everyone noticed that she is the worst at it. Now Chuchu was afraid that the guests would be angry with her, and Siana decided that she had to help this girl. Then she suggested that her friend work out together every day during the break. Chuchu was happy, hoping that she would teach her everything and considered her an incredibly kind person. After that, they started training every night, and Siana explained that they had to boil the right amount of water first. Then you need to add 1 spoonful of tea to a preheated teapot, add leaves, and pour boiling water over it immediately. After that, you need to strain through a strainer, and I did not forget to add that in order to become a professional, you need a lot of practice. Over time, Chuchu was not yet perfect, but she no longer confused the order and did not pour tea. Now Siana was glad that Chuchu would definitely not be accused of bullying the guests, and not a single drop would be spilled by. She, in turn, thanked her friend for training, believing that she did it much better than other maids. But the former princess modestly explained that she herself tried well, so it turns out, because she is a diligent student. Also, during their training, they became quite close, and Chuchu told her partner a lot about herself. She admitted that her father is a miner who works 7 days a week from a mining town in the east. He has to feed 13 children, which surprised Siana, and Chuchu added that they have a very close-knit family. However, they have a hard time making ends meet, so she applied for a job as a maid to help her dad. The girl admitted that official maids have a higher salary, and she also wants her younger ones to eat meat every day. Chuchu then wondered how Gianna got here, suggesting that she had a more complicated history since she came from abroad. Then the girl confessed to her that she used to be the princess of a small kingdom, and here she was, appointed by the crown prince. He explained to her that he felt sorry for her because she had lost her country and parents. Chuchu couldn't believe that Siana was referring to the bloody Prince Rashid, who had never lost. Even more, she couldn't believe that the former princess had met him in person. Siana immediately remembered that as she walked by, she had heard the stories told by the maids, and she realized that he was popular. The girls whispered that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince looked even more beautiful than the statue. They admired how his silver hair sparkled in the sunlight, and his violet eyes were as bright as the Milky Way. Then Chuchu confessed to the princess that she just dreamed of seeing the prince, and she confirmed that he was really handsome. She then wondered if he really had a violent temper despite his good looks. Siana confirmed this, saying that it was he who took the life of her entire family, and then Chuchu began to apologize for blurting out without thinking. The princess still could not tell about her true feelings and assured that everything was fine, because those people had tormented her all her life. But then Chuchu said that it was impossible. She did not understand how she could not care, because the prince killed her entire family. However, Siana repeated again, explaining that quite a lot of time had passed, so there was no need to worry so much. Chuchu still understood that she was saying this, only so that she would not feel guilty. She also noticed that the former princess was very kind, and then hugged her and repeated it a few more times. From that day on, Siana's attitude towards her friend completely changed, and Chuchu also began to treat her completely differently. One day during the evening cleaning, Jeanne crept up to the princess and decided to scare her. But then Chuchu stood in front of her like a bear and threatened her not to dare to say anything wrong to Siana. If Jana disobeyed, then the defender threatened that she would stretch her face like cheese and wrap her on a pole. She was frightened but immediately began to make excuses that she only wanted to ask what time it was and left. In addition, Chuchu always brought Siana food for no reason and persuaded her to eat because she still needed to grow. Basically, she got sweets to the princess, explaining that it was much sweeter and tastier than hard bread. At the same time, Chuchu hated the prince for leaving a little girl without a family and considered him a complete scoundrel. The maid wished him all sorts of dirty tricks. In most cases it sounded childish, but she said it from the bottom of her heart. Xian was even a little sorry for the crown prince she hated, but it was also nice to have someone on her side. In any case, since he is in such a high position, he probably hears curses in his direction every day many times. At this time, Rashid received a letter from Baroness Appleton, and Saul asked what was wrong with him, noticing how the prince began to itch. But he only explained that his ear itched, and even remembered a sign that meant that someone was scolding him at that moment. Saul objected, because if this were true, then the prince would roll on the floor for years from the fact that his ears would constantly itch. He then noticed a chipmunk nibbling on an apple and commented that it should be delicious. Rashid confirmed that the Appletons had the most delicious apples, and the guard noted that those farmers had never been invited to the palace to thank them. Then he offered the emperor to hold a reception. In addition, under this pretext, he could check on Ziana. The prince liked this offer, and as a reward, he decided to let the guard play with his cute animals for half a day. Saul still refused, and Rashid said that he simply did not understand how cute his children were. Then he read the letter and told the guard that the Baroness would also gladly join the tea party. Maids underwent various trainings, since the status of the imperial family should not be lowered due to the mistake of servants. At the same time, they had to clean the uneven lawn as well as decorate the tables according to the number of people. Siana put hydrangeas on top of everything, which she cut in the morning so that it did not look too monotonous. After that, she decided to admire the view a little, and Choo-Choo shared the news with her. She admitted that not only farmers would come to the tea party, but also Baroness Appleton, the owner of the orchard. Now Siana understood why everyone here was so lively, because in addition to the guests, they wanted to impress the Baroness. The girls also noticed that Jana is very beautiful today, and even changed jewelry and makeup. Choo-Choo thought it looked too vulgar, and Siana couldn't believe she could impress the Baroness in this way. Her friend suggested that because this was Jana's first guest, and then admitted that she herself had changed a little today. She was also worried that everything would go well, and Siana asked not to worry because she taught her to be a maid for a reason. It was not long before the doors opened and the guests entered, and the maids prepared to meet them. The guests were surprised that this was the imperial palace. One of them even wore her best dress. After greetings, the apprentice maids escorted the guests to the table, but Jean remained standing. The girls did not understand why she was doing this, although they guessed that she was aimed at serving the Baroness herself. During the service of guests, an aristocratic atmosphere also reigned, and the arrivals discussed the maids. Still, the banquet did not begin until all the guests had arrived, and at the very end, the Baroness herself appeared. The students were just delighted when they saw her, especially Jana, because she was really very beautiful. The maid immediately ran up to her and greeted her in the best possible way, thankful for her coming. From excitement, Jeanne for a moment had a terrible expression on her face, and she understood that if someone saw her, she would immediately run away. Still, she did not show any sign and asked Madame to follow her, and then escorted her to the prepared place. From Appleton, Siana noticed a pleasant and expensive aroma of rose, although she had previously thought that it was a simple, noble family. Also, the former princess noticed that this woman is really very beautiful. Previously, the girl had always been interested in what the Baroness looked like, and now she was even a little jealous of Jean. At this point, the guests noticed that another guest had arrived, but Siana could not yet make out who it was. But soon she saw a hunched old woman approaching, and so terrible that no one wanted to serve her. At the same time, the banquet still did not begin until the last guest arrived, and Siana came over and greeted this old woman. The girl understood that no guest should be left without attention, and then offered to take her to the table. 3 or 4 guests sat at each table, and one maid served them. And after all the guests were seated, they announced that the imperial banquet could now begin. The guests discussed their presence in the imperial palace while seeing that it was an ordinary tea party. They also admitted, thinking that they would pick apples all their lives and would never experience such luxury. Siana heard what they were talking about and understood that their conversations were only about mundane things. There was no talk of state affairs, and so the atmosphere seemed quite relaxing. But the former princess thought only about the service and soon served the guests their today's dessert. Opening the lid, she explained that it was chocolate from Coco Kana and advised to just eat it and taste it. The guests were surprised that they were served chocolate, which only royalty eats. At the same time, it is so sweet that even the prince himself will stop grumbling when he tastes it. Then the ladies began to discuss this dessert, while each put a piece in her mouth. Immediately, a pleasant wave of sweetness swept over them, and they realized that it was incredibly tasty. The chocolate just melted in their mouths. They even began to worry that this sweetness was disappearing so quickly. Siana understood that for those who had tasted chocolate for the first time, such a reaction was quite normal. The former princess also noticed that the old lady had quickly coped with the dessert and was now only wiping the residue around her mouth. Then the maid approached her and handed her a napkin, realizing that she was uncomfortable since she also soiled all her hands. The girl also offered her to serve something else, but she, turning away, refused. Then the other guests remembered that they also had handkerchiefs and began to offer them as well. They also noticed that apparently maids, working for noble ladies, should be uncomfortable serving people like them. But Siana explained that everything was fine and that they were all dear guests to her, and then asked to enjoy the tea party. After that, the girl offered the ladies to pour tea made by Earl Grey from Ingrid, hoping that they would like it. But she also added that if they prefer another, they can safely tell her about it. The guests agreed and soon tasted delicious tea, realizing that the royal family drinks it. At this point, one of the ladies could not determine how this tea differed from what she drank at home. And the old lady explained that in order to understand the taste of food or drink, you need to take small pieces or sips. The ladies also understood that the Baroness was the only one who knew about it, but they also knew that she was the main guest here today. Then Siana thought that not everyone knew the Baroness and decided to clarify, and they explained that Appleton Namjic had recently married. One lady added that she had definitely not been to the farm because she had never seen her before. But I heard that the Baron fell in love with her at first sight because she is really very beautiful. Now Siana understood that Jana would have to listen carefully to this guest and not make mistakes. After all, if she made her angry, then the atmosphere of the banquet would be spoiled, and that grumbler was only glad that the most important guest was in front of her now. Joan was the daughter of a merchant and believed that she was the one who should serve such people as the Baroness. She then served Appleton chocolate from the Imperial Palace, explaining that it was of the highest quality and worth trying. But the Baroness only sat and looked at the dessert, and then asked how long the maid was going to ignore her. Appleton also added that Jana's arrogant greeting and look seemed to throw mud at her. At the same time, she even tolerates the sight of the dessert served, and also stated that the maid just poured her terrible tea. After that, the Baroness asked how long she should endure such rudeness, and Jan only offered her to pour tea again. The maid believed that she had not made any mistakes, because she had studied in a noble family, and other maids praised her. Later, the Baroness also noticed that the level of maids in the Imperial Palace was quite high, but there was still something wrong. She also remembered that a maid who does not cope well with her work is severely punished. Appleton added that such people are locked in a cage or punished corporeally, and in case of a repeated mistake, limbs are cut off. Then she asked Jen what punishment she thought she deserved, and she was just shaking with fear. At this point, Siana intervened and explained that their skills were still very small and that Jana had not yet grown up to the level to serve high-ranking guests. Then the former princess began to ask the Baroness to forgive the maid for this. But she said that if everything was decided by bowing the head and apologizing, then their world would be incredibly simple. Appleton didn't understand why she should give the maid a second chance, especially since this banquet was arranged by the royal family. Siana then explained that if this holiday was ruined because of one maid, then the king could be very upset. The girl hoped that the Baroness herself did not want this, but for some reason she took her words as a threat. The former princess assured that she would not dare to behave like this and explained that these are just requests to make the guest feel comfortable. After thinking about it, the Baroness agreed to be served by Siana, but said that if she did not satisfy her, then all the anger would be directed at her. The maid agreed, while her stepmother's gaze stood in front of her again, who still praised her tea. It was a moment that didn't tolerate any mistakes. It took her life, and she can never forget such a time. Now, pouring tea for the Baroness, she again explained its origin and expressed the hope that she did not mind trying this variety. The Baroness carefully observed the maid's actions and noticed that she had brilliant manners. Siana knew that the main ingredient of tea was the brew as well as the proportion of boiling water to the tea leaves. The error occurred due to improper brewing of the tea and its tray, so the taste was bitter and the aroma weakened. There was no mistake here, and the amount of boiling water should not exceed the tea, otherwise the taste will change. Also, for the correct pouring of tea, you need to raise the teapot high so that it touches the air, because this way the aroma will spread faster. You also need to make sure that the tea does not get behind the cup, and then slowly serve the cup to the guest. Siana was sure that she had chosen the perfect proportions of tea and asked the Baroness to confess if something did not suit her. The girl understood that she had brewed everything right, selecting excellent leaves, but if the guest did not like it, then everything was bad. Siana held her breath as she waited for an answer, but Appleton said the tea was delicious. The former princess was mentally glad that everything worked out for her, and after that she decided to bow out. She only asked the guest to call her if she suddenly needed something. Soon the tea party and this relaxing atmosphere came to an end, and after that the guests began to disperse little by little. Siana approached the lady she had served earlier and apologized for having to leave her, but she assured that everything was fine, because if the Baroness had been angry, it would have been worse, and admitted that she herself was very frightened. The madam also said that thanks to Siana's work, they fully enjoyed the banquet, and then thanked them. The girl was glad that this guest was in their position, and at parting she asked her to be more careful. Then the old lady came up to Siana, and the maid thought she was going to say something to her. She began, uncertainly, that she had thought a lot and admitted that she was sure that she would be treated badly in the imperial palace. She also shared that she was afraid at the same time, but assured that she was lucky with Siana, and then she plucked up the courage. The girl repeated again with joy that the amount of boiling water should not exceed tea, otherwise the taste would change. Then the old woman admitted that she drank delicious tea with chocolate and just had a great time talking. Siana remembered that for centuries, a maid should not be overly emotional, but be polite to everyone. At the same time, she was very glad that everything worked out, but she did not know what to do. Still, she smiled and expressed her gratitude to the old woman for meeting such wonderful people. The Baroness saw how Chiana said goodbye to the elderly woman, standing a little in the distance. After the banquet itself, the maids began cleaning. As a result, all this day was spent working for the guests. This life was supposed to be for maids, but in fact, this was how maids were trained. Their work was completed very late, and at the end of the day, Lip realized that it was difficult and necessary to rest. But with all this, there were also good sides, because they could afford to enjoy the leftovers. Siana finished the bitter cocoa with exquisite butter, and Chuchu refused, ruining that she would lose muscle mass. The princess even sympathized with her, thinking that she was having a hard time, but the maid did not understand why she was constantly looking at her like that. Chuchu admitted that when she started working, she did not expect that everything would turn out this way, and remembered how one lady offered to take her home. The guest thought she would be useful on the farm when she looked at how big her triceps were. Siana still did not understand why she refused to work on the farm, and she explained that this was what the other maids wanted for her. They just came up and began to praise the princess for having done well with the Baroness. Then they began to ask the girl to teach them how to make tea so well, and even argued about who would be the first to get to the training. But then Jeanne shouted that they had lost their minds, reminding them that she herself was the best tea maker. The red-haired maid couldn't believe how the others could ignore her now, thinking that they had no pride. The girls were surprised, thinking that she should be ashamed at that moment, and apparently that's why she was still silent. They also began to reproach her for almost ruining the banquet because of her, and were grateful to Siana for fixing everything. They also explained that otherwise they could all be punished, and Jana herself could be fired. Now she was reproached that instead of asking for forgiveness, she said such words and asked her to think rationally. Jana immediately boiled over and said that she did not understand how it was possible to talk to people like them. Siana recalled that the Baroness was a level higher than the other guests, and even her posture was elegant. The girl noticed not only her posture, but even gestures during the tea party spoke of her belonging to the aristocrats. Siana also liked this lady, but not because she was a Baroness. The girl noticed something special. Late in the evening, the guard Sol, standing at the door to the Emperor's bedroom, noticed that someone was approaching. He then saw that it was the Baroness, but explained that if she walked into the room like that, it would cause problems. But Appleton, with her strict etiquette, admitted that she still could not forget that maid. The guard only asked her to forget, assuring her that no one was going to plot any dirty deeds. Then, noticing her gaze, Sol began to apologize, explaining that he did not mean it at all. But with a smile, she decided that it seemed funny to him and explained that it would not be so at all. The Baroness also could not understand what kind of soldiers they had gone, and expressed the hope that she would see him begging for forgiveness. Then, entering the Emperor's room, Appleton saw that there she was greeted by various animals and birds. The Baroness didn't care what it looked like either, but she liked them very much, and then a bird flew to her and sat on her hand. At that moment, Sul called her His Majesty and explained that he had already prepared the bathroom. Rashid decided to change his appearance for half a day, and for this he used a magic stone, which is very expensive. When the Emperor took a seat in the bathroom, the guard asked how the meeting had gone and whether the maids had coped with their task. He admitted that to some extent everything went well, and the one who had recently been a princess managed to learn all the etiquette. At the same time, Rashid was confused by the position of her hands when she held the kettle, and her gaze did not look directly into her eyes. Still, it seemed to him beautiful, and everything was done exactly as it was written in the etiquette of maids. This girl seemed quite interesting to the Emperor, and the guard could not understand why such thoughts occurred to him. Sol knew well that he was usually uncomfortable, and now he did not understand what had happened to His Majesty. Many also noticed that the Emperor had become kind and more open, and girls dared to ask what his favorite type of women was. Rashid could not give an exact answer and only explained that he liked cuties who conquered with their smile. His Majesty had changed so much that now he even began to look at his subjects in an unusual way. The guard also understood that the princess had managed to get used to it, and apparently, being a maid is her calling. Saul also noticed that the emperor spoke only about her and did not think about marriage and the birth of an heir. The guard began to guess that His Majesty was going to turn this girl into more than just a personal servant. Then he reminded Rashid that Ziana was from the country he had defeated, and if he decided to commit his insidious actions, it would lead to tragedy. He explained that he only checked its capabilities, and then admitted that in his opinion it looks great. At this time, the princess found a hole in her apron and decided to quickly fix everything, since she knew how to embroider since she was 5 years old. While the maids were amazed at how quickly she succeeded, Lip came in and announced that a guest had come to Siana. The teacher explained that Baroness Appleton wanted to explain something to her, so she had come here. The girl could not understand what had happened, because the tea party had gone well, and decided that she had made some mistake. On the way, she went through many options in her head, but she did not yet see where she could have gone wrong. Then she entered the hall, and the Baroness immediately apologized for coming unannounced. But then she stood up, and Tiana was shocked when she saw that it was not the Baroness, but the same old woman. She then apologized to the maid and decided to introduce herself, explaining that she was Magdalena Appleton. The old lady also said that Siana made a good impression at the tea party and then greeted her again. All this was unexpected for her, so she decided to give the maid a basket of apples. She also asked the girl to take some time for her, and now Siana realized that this was the real Baroness Appleton. Now the princess was even more shocked. She did not understand who that woman was then, although she did not say that she was a baroness. Siana immediately began to apologize to the old woman for not understanding and making a mistake that hurt her honor and dignity. The girl was so ashamed at that moment, and she continued to apologize for her behavior, but the old lady only laughed and then explained that she had voluntarily concealed her identity. She explained that the tea banquet at the Imperial Palace is an opportunity that may never present itself to her again. The Baroness knew she had to go, but her appearance was not as good as before, and she was afraid that people wouldn't treat her with respect when they saw her like this, so it was better not to appear there. Appleton understood that if she went to this holiday, everyone present would talk about her. Everyone would condemn her and ask how the Baroness could have become so ugly. The old woman admitted that even in her garden she often hears such ridicule, and this makes it hard for her. Then another letter was sent to her, suggesting that she not show that she was in fact a Baroness. Then Marklena wondered if she should go, knowing that this was her last chance to go outside. Even the old woman understood that if she did not reveal her identity, then no one would take care of her. But then she saw Siana, who greeted her very politely and invited her to a table. The Baroness noticed that in that outfit it was impossible to hide the dignity of the girl who stood before her even without makeup. That day, Appleton was amazed. Siana's grace and politeness greatly impressed her, and she wanted to become the same. After tea, the old woman began to learn etiquette and even practiced in front of the mirror how to thank the girl for a good time. Markadlena also wanted to please the maid with the fruits from her farm because she was really grateful to her for that day. The princess could not believe that the Baroness herself had come to thank the maid. At the same time, she paid attention to the position of her hands and the angle of inclination, as well as the angle of her dress, and there was a sense of nobility in all her movements. Although it was just a greeting, Marklena Appleton showed everyone what kind of person she was. The old lady remembered how Kiana wished her not to think about anything and have a good time. And the princess understood that this was a person who lived in love in this world, because only love is capable of anything. Then she bowed to the Baroness and assured her that she did not deserve such praise. The girl didn't know if she would be able to accept it with respect, but she had no choice but to accept her gift. Proudly holding a basket of apples in her hands, Siana said that she would always remember the fruit that she gave her. Then she treated the other maids to these apples, and one decided to remember why Snow White ate the apple if it was poisoned. But the other said that she would eat it even despite the poison, because they are so sweet, and asked herself for another one. The maids, who worked every day and ate black bread, were happy that the Baroness gave them honey apples. Eating fruit, they now considered her a deity, and shouted that they loved this woman very much now. Now Siana herself decided to try the apples and noticed that they were really very tasty. At the same time, she was now interested in who was the woman who everyone took for a baroness. She looked like a prince to Siana because she had the same hair and purple eyes. For a moment, she thought it was the princess who had come to supervise the new maids. At that moment, a teacher came in and asked them to stop eating, saying that Siana had been made a full-time maid today. In surprise, the princess even dropped the apple that she had just held in her hand because she definitely did not expect this. Jean immediately began to shout that such a thing could not be, that it was complete nonsense and that no one understood such a decision. She also demanded that the teacher explain everything, and then she recalled that a couple of days ago there was a tea party. She then clarified that it was actually a test of the students' abilities and stated that no one doubted who did the best. After that, Lip declared the matter closed, and Xian ordered that she should be in the Ruby Castle at dawn. The teacher explained that now the girl would serve Princess Eris, and after that she left. Siana was surprised because all the students wanted to become head maids, and she came later than everyone else, but she was the first to be accepted. The former princess didn't want to stand out, and now all the other maids would hate her. The girl understood that now she would have to get used to such an attitude, and this made her very sad. But then she heard her friends start congratulating, saying that now she was finally free. Some also admitted that they were jealous of her, but still happy for her, and Siana realized that she was only upset in vain. Still, she was still a little sad, but if she hadn't intervened then, the tea party would have ended in complete failure. The girls also admitted that although they wanted to become head maids, they were not going to become envious. In addition, she fed them such delicious apples, and then Siana thanked them for their support. She saw in them completely different people, not at all those who surrounded her in the kingdom, and from the first salary she promised to bring them delicious food. And only Jeanne again decided to express her dissatisfaction while insulting the other maids. She stated that they were completely crazy because it was strange that Siana with an unknown origin was promoted so early. But then Choo-Choo came forward, who told the redhead that she was talking complete nonsense, and she immediately felt her whole body tremble. Still, she had a little courage to threaten that she would tell her father everything about the others. Then she went out, and the girls, although they thought her behavior was terrible, were now glad that they would get more apples this way. Jeanne shouted at everyone, but the maids quickly forgot about it over delicious food and conversation. Siana was glad that she didn't have much luggage at all, although she didn't expect to go anywhere from here. But from tomorrow onwards, she would already be the head maid of the Imperial Palace, and yet it was better than being a princess. The girl thought that although she was very tired, it was a good job, and then someone knocked on her door. It was Choo-Choo who came, and Siana decided that something had happened, but she explained that nothing terrible had happened. Then the muscular maid handed the former princess a hairpin and explained that she wanted to make a gift as a sign of promotion. She also explained that she bought it in a hurry, as she did not have time, but hoped that she would like this thing. Choo-Choo also added that maids are allowed to preen a little, and asked her friend not to think that she was worse than anyone else. Siana knew that junior maids received very little, and this maid had bought her a gift by spending her savings. Noticing her friend's thoughtful face, Choo-Choo assumed that she did not like the gift. At the same time, she said that she asked to choose the most beautiful one, but then Siana pounced on her with hugs. Then the former princess began to thank her friend, explaining that it was a wonderful gift and she liked it very much. Around Choo-Choo, Siana always felt warmth, and she knew that she would miss her. But she believed that everything would be fine. In the morning, Lip asked a maid if Princess Grace had a maid of her own. The girl explained that it was her, and explained that she had asked to be transferred here, as it was unbearable there. She also understood that it looked illogical from the outside, but only those who were there knew what was wrong with this work. The maid said that it was better to scrub the floors and run errands, and thought that there was no such maid as to please the princess. She remembered how terrible it was for her in that palace, and she was sure that there was definitely no such person in their empire. A little later, Siana finished packing, and believing that her future would be more beautiful than when she was a princess, she prepared to leave. Before she left, the same maid came to her and said that she was sorry to tell her, but that the work would be unbearable. She explained that all the previous maids had run away, and she herself had left as soon as the opportunity arose. Siana assumed that it was very difficult for her to be alone, and she confirmed, and that it was especially difficult to keep an eye on the princess. She also added that Princess Aris is not just picky, everyone in the palace believes that she is just a devil in the flesh. There was a fantastic palace with a small garden, which the emperor had bestowed upon Rosemary, a dancer whom he liked at first sight. This was the Ruby Palace, and the princess she gave birth to now lives there. It was the 7th princess of the empire. Then, this maidservant led Ziana to the palace, which seemed rather gloomy from the outside. Entering inside, the maid decided to gently call the princess, but she did not respond. They walked further down the corridor, and the maid knocked on the bedroom to announce that a new maid had arrived. Siana still hoped that this princess was simply branded as a mudblood, but as soon as they entered, a huge spider with furry paws immediately appeared in front of them. The maid who worked here before immediately screamed hysterically from fright, and then felt bad. Then Aris came out to them, and it seemed to Ziana now that growing up so energetic in such a situation was simply not realistic. The princess held that spider by the string and asked why the newcomer did not react. She immediately apologized and said that she was ready to feign the reaction she wanted to see. Then Siana clutched her head and screamed as hard as she could, as if she was very frightened of something. Afterward, she asked permission to introduce herself, and when the princess allowed it, she greeted her. Aris did notice that the new maid was not afraid at all, and she couldn't believe that her prank hadn't worked. Throwing the spider aside, the princess asked them to leave, stating that all the maids had taken her out. Siana could not yet understand what it was, but then the maid turned to her, as if she did not lose her senses. She began to thank her because there was no way to leave here before since there was no suitable maid. But Siana still asked what to do here and found out that it was only to look after the princess, and the rest was at her discretion. That maid explained that there was no one here anyway but her and that weird girl. The girl understood that now she had absolutely all the work on her, but since she came, then she had to take it. She decided to start with cleaning and realized that no one had put things in order here for a very long time. Everything was clearing literally before her eyes, and soon Siana saw that it was not so gloomy here. Then the princess came to her and said that everything she did was useless, and she didn't care about cleanliness. Then Siana turned to the little girl and asked what she had to do with her. But Aris was annoyed that she was being treated like a real princess again, believing that no one dared to treat her like that. Then she demanded that the newcomer not act good, and then said that she would also leave here at the first opportunity. At this time, Sol asked the emperor why Siana had been sent to the Ruby Palace. At the same time, he believed that it was better to do everything in an organized manner and not to act at the whim of His Majesty. At the same time, Rashid said that the girl could be invited to his palace, and the guard promised to convey this order to the maid. The emperor again stated that he could bring Siana here right now, without even giving him time to think. At the same time, he remembered how he had seen her at the banquet, especially how sweetly she said goodbye to the real Baroness. Rashid thought that this girl was very nice, especially when she smiled, and hoped that they would see each other soon, even though the Ruby Palace was far away. At this time, Siana explained to the princess that it was a secret and asked her to explain how she knew it. She explained to the girl that she was an employee here, but if she found a better place, she would certainly move. But at the same time, she is still here and will do everything to take care of the princess. A little later, she put Aris to bed, and in the morning brought her food, but she refused, explaining that milk and vegetables had a poisonous taste. Then the princess demanded cookies, but Siana explained that snacking instead of eating a full meal is harmful to health. She also explained that if she does not eat well, she will often get sick, and it is very important for the princess to be healthy. Then Aris said that she was already old enough, and the maid noticed that the girl was very thin. The girl understood that no matter how difficult a child Aris was, it was wrong that no one could take care of her. The princess also stated that the maid was lying to her because she was already 10 years old, but she assured that this was true. Then she repeated again that if this continues, the girl will have health problems. After that, she promised the princess to give sweets if she fully ate everything for breakfast. After breakfast, Aris also did not want to brush her teeth, and then Siana threatened that she would save all the sweets for tomorrow. The next day, opening the window, the maid noticed that the morning was just wonderful, and the sun was just asking to come into the room. But the princess still continued to lie in bed, wrapped in a blanket, and even decided to refuse breakfast. Still, Ziana managed to pick it up, but then Aris, when she saw the food, demanded that something normal be brought to her. The maid explained that this was normal food, and that she herself had also eaten a cream bun and fried chicken. Only Aris began to scream again, and this time for the fact that the maid had eaten everything, but she explained that she was only following the rules of the imperial family. She also added that after the mealtime is over, all the food that is left goes to the servants. Now Siana felt quite full, and at the same time she found a way to make a fastidious child eat. If you are allowed to experience hunger, then any child will start eating, and the maid will simply eat all her food. The girl remembered how she herself was locked in a room for days and did not eat anything, and now she did everything according to plan. The essence of this plan was also to find out the favorite dish of the princess, and she soon ate all the prepared salad, but Aris said that she simply decided not to leave anything to the servants, remembering that they get the food after the master. So the girl decided to leave the maid hungry, but Siana only praised her for doing well. At the same time, the maid stroked Aris's hair, pretending to apologize for her rude behavior. She only asked her to leave again, but then she noticed that something appeared in her hair and tried to take it off. At this time, Siana was glad that everything was resolved with the meal, and it was time to start cleaning. She invited the princess to go take a bath, but she began to shout that she hated water, foam, and a prickly brush. Then the maid explained that if you do not wash, then cockroaches will come, who like everything dirty. She added that these cockroaches eat skin and hair, and also there sometimes, but Arisol shouted that it was a lie. The princess said that she had not seen any cockroaches in all the time, and then the maid pointed out that the girl had an itchy head. She asked the baby to listen to how someone was running and rustling there, and explained that these were cockroaches that were gnawing something. The princess was very afraid that she could be eaten by bugs, and immediately demanded that the maid wash her. At first, the washcloth seemed painful to the girl, but the farther she went, the more pleasant the sensation seemed to her. Then a little foam got into her eyes, but Aris did not feel a burning sensation. On the contrary, the smell of rosemary seemed very pleasant. Siana used the same technique to make the girl brush her teeth, saying that cockroaches eat teeth that have pieces of food on them. Soon, Aris declared that this maid would soon make her go crazy, explaining that she was very tired and had no strength left. Siana only praised the princess again for doing a good job, and explained that in order to gain strength, she needed a good night's sleep. But then Aris began to shout that she had been bothering her all day and did not want her to molest her in her sleep. The princess said that she slept when she wanted, and the maid confessed that she wanted her to fall asleep as soon as possible. Siana also admitted that she knows one interesting fairy tale, but if the princess is not interested, then she will simply leave. However, Aris stopped her and asked her to tell her the story, and the maid agreed. Siana began to tell me that a long time ago there was a diamond princess who was very fond of precious stones. She collected them everywhere, and then one day she decided to decorate her entire body with them, which made her shine brighter than the sun. But one day she heard the news that a dragon that lives in the west has the most beautiful diamond in the world. The princess wanted it so badly that she herself began to make her way through the thorny thickets and swamp. When she came to the castle, the dragon saw how beautiful she was and asked her to marry him in exchange for a diamond. Then Siana noticed that Aris began to yawn, and a few moments later she was already fast asleep. Wishing the girl sweet dreams, the maid smacked her and promised herself that she would make sure that she grew up the healthiest. The girl understood that this was the duty of Princess Aris's personal maid. A lot had changed since Siana had arrived at this palace, but the girl had started fooling around again. The princess also ran through the flower bed, but the maid began to explain that it was forbidden to run there because she had planted flowers there and it would hurt the seeds. Aris asked what kind of flowers they were, and the maid began to list the names of different species. She also explained that the light falls well here and the soil is fertile, and if you water well, the flowers will bloom quickly. Then the maid promised that when the buds bloomed, she would make a beautiful wreath for the princess. At this time, the girl still did not understand why Siana constantly behaved with her as if she was the only princess. Aris couldn't figure out what was wrong with this maid, and she decided that she was definitely missing something and hiding something from her. The princess wanted to know her sincere intentions, but then she noticed that she was only smiling sweetly. Then Aris noticed a hairpin on the floor and immediately put it on her head, and when Siana saw it, her face immediately became serious. It was a hairpin that Choo-Choo had given her, and no matter how much she had to do, she couldn't lose it. Then she approached the princess and apologetically explained that this hairpin belonged to her. The girl also explained that she apparently dropped it when she was taking care of the flower bed, and then asked to return this thing. But the girl was not going to give the hairpin just like that, and said that if she wanted to return it, she should try to take it away. Then Aris ran away and was sure that the maid would never catch her because no one had ever done such a thing before. But soon the girl saw that the maid was almost there, and she could not understand why she was so fast. Soon they found themselves at the fountain, and when they stopped, Siana explained that it was not good to take other people's things and run away. Then she demanded that the girl return the hairpin, and she only disappointed that everything she said was just empty words. The girl was offended that Siana had previously promised to take care of her, and now she just threw the hairpin into the water. She remembered how one of the maids approached the princess and hugged her, promising that as a servant, she would do whatever Eris told her to do. The girl thanked her and immediately felt how warm and pleasant she was now, as if her mother was next to her again. And then that maid was arrested, accused of stealing things from the palace and selling them, and she will be held accountable for this in court. The maid was led away, but she continued to ask the princess to help her, but the princess only explained that it was an order. The next maid was also very quick to pack her things, stating that the princess was simply useless and of no use. The girl was then left completely alone and understood that she was not a princess at all, because without her mother, she was nothing. Even with a disgusting pedigree, she didn't think she was useless at all, but even her nanny left her because she was too picky. Now Siana was standing in front of her, who was also supposed to please her, and then the girl woke up. She knew it was just a terrible dream, but she also knew that everyone was abandoning her, and when she didn't see Ziana around, she thought she was gone too. Eris thought that she had packed her things that night and left, so she wanted to know in advance that she would be left behind, so as not to be even more sad. Then the maid came into the room, telling a funny rhyme, and noticed that the princess woke up very early today. But noticing the strange expression on the girl's face, she realized that she was having a nightmare and allowed her to go back to sleep. Siana also explained to the baby that when you want to sleep, there is no appetite, so digestion does not work. But Eris couldn't believe she hadn't been left alone, despite what had happened. The princess immediately rushed to hug her and then admitted that she really did not want to do this. The girl also asked her for forgiveness and begged that the maid would not hate her for throwing away the hairpin. Siana assured her that everything was fine, but Aris still couldn't believe it, and the maid explained that small children sometimes did that. At the same time, the girl admitted that she was pleased that the princess sincerely asked her for forgiveness. The girl also admitted that she knows how unpleasant the palace is for Ziana because there are so many things to do, and she is only one. And then she suddenly promised the maid that she would help her with everything and would also obey and share sweets. Aris was ready to do anything so that this maid did not leave her, and Siana agreed that she would grow up to be a worthy princess. Since that day, the princess has really changed a lot and helped by watering the flower beds or trying to clean the rooms. The girl was worried that it would be difficult for the baby, but she did not give up, and she did not even do badly. Siana still tried to let her know that children have more important things than cleaning and laundry. The maid explained to the princess that she meant studying, and she was even upset, but Siana reminded her promise to be a good child. The maid explained to the girl that she did not need to know difficult subjects yet, but she was obliged to write perfectly. Then she wanted to take out a pen and paper, but when she opened the drawer, she noticed that the necessary items were not there. The maid promised that she would quickly find what she needed and return immediately. Then she turned to the employee to give her pens and paper, but he refused, explaining that he could not distribute such things to anyone. Siana explained that this was necessary for the princess's education, but he had already had cases where maids hid behind the princess. He also advised that if she needed anything, she should get permission from the emperor to do so. The girl realized that no one would give her consent and even fell into despair, and then Aris asked if she should inform her brother Rashid about it. Only now did Ziana remember the crown prince, and then wondered if they were close friends. The princess explained that he got along well with her mother, but was not sure that it would be the same with her. The maid realized that if Rashid was curious, he would definitely agree, so they should try. After that, she offered the princess to write him a letter, and soon he himself came to them, immediately asking how they were doing here. Aris also didn't understand what he was doing here, explaining that all he had to do was send a confirmation. Rashid explained that he had received a letter that his sister needed help, so he decided to deliver the confirmation in person. He also explained that when guests come, you first need to greet and offer a cup of tea. The maid immediately apologized to him, explaining that there would be no tea since they did not have tea leaves yet. But the prince asked her not to worry, saying that he had brought everything with him, and after telling her the brand of tea, asked her to prepare it. Ziana didn't even think that she would meet the emperor in the imperial palace in this way. At the same time, the girl noticed that Rashid was staring at her, and she wondered if he remembered her. After that, Siana also noticed the way he was holding the cup of tea, and these movements seemed very familiar to her. And the princess really liked the tea, and she said that she had never drunk such a thing, praising that it was not even hot. The girl explained that it was because of the prince's tea leaves, but he said that the princess's tea was also very tasty. At that moment, the girl thought that the emperor remembered her, and the little princess also thought that they knew each other. Rashid was surprised that Siana did not talk about him, and then he admitted that he himself had accepted this girl as a maid and sent her here. Eris began to ask why he did this, and her brother explained that he thought the maid was cute. Then a guard approached the emperor and reminded him that he had a royal visit, so it was time for them to go. Rashid was saddened that he hadn't even finished his tea, but Sul noticed that he had emptied his cup and was surprised. Then the prince handed his sister a document, and she asked how to pay her, but he assured that a cup of tea was enough. Afterwards, His Majesty thanked the maid for making a delicious tea, and she thanked him. Then Aris told her brother to stop meddling with someone else's maid and demanded that he clean up. Finally, the prince admitted that he would try to be less persistent, and when he left, Siana realized that she and her sister were so close. But the little princess objected, saying that they actually had a terrible relationship. The maid also noticed that after receiving the document, the princess had a good conversation with her brother, but she said that it was only a small transaction. The girl also explained that although her brother agreed, he imposed a large debt on her because they were competitors for the throne. Previously, Ziana thought that the crown prince was the only heir to the empire, but at the same time, a lot has changed. It also meant that the struggle for the throne between brother and sister continued. Eris felt very at ease right now, even though she had no family and no mother to support her. The girl also admitted that she did not want such a fate for herself, but at the same time she is glad that she can accept such a challenge to her fate. Now, Siana realized that she was wrong when she first thought that brother and sister got along well. After all, if they really cared about each other, then she shouldn't have neglected the princess's feelings so much. Siana knew that being a princess was a difficult fate in all royal families, and in order to become worthy of the throne, she had to give up her childhood. The girl wondered how she could bear such a burden alone, and then Aris offered her another cup of tea. The maid also recalled that at one time she only wanted to spend a simple life in this world. At this time, Sol asked the prince if he liked Sian, and he confirmed that with her large eyes, she looked like a squirrel. Then His Majesty began to think about taking this maid for himself, and then asked if the guard had noticed the changes in the palace. He admitted that it had become noticeably clean, and also saw that Princess Eris looked much better than before. Both of them knew that the maid had done a good job, and then the prince nudged Sol as he found him boring. Rashid also shared his joy that Eris has finally opened her heart to Siana, and that she does not limit people in title and power. He also noticed that this maid was simple and quickly found a common language with people, although this was not enough to gain trust. Then His Majesty remembered how his sister, when she was still in the womb, was just as restless. Rosemary even let him touch her belly, and he could see for himself how the child kicked. After that, Rashid added that everything that was cute remained in Eris, while he could not help but admit that he liked the tea that Siana brewed. Meanwhile, the maid asked the princess how often His Majesty would visit them now, but she did not know. After a while, Gianna accidentally met Choo-Choo near the warehouse, and the girls were very happy to see each other. Strong noticed that her friend had become a little pale, and she, in turn, noticed that Choo-Choo had become larger. She admitted that she was now training a lot to pump up her body, and then asked how Siana was doing. The girl straightened the hairpin she had given her, which she already had again, and told a little about herself. He and Aris had recently been visited again by the emperor, who had decided to visit them on the way. He also brought them a cake with a lot of toppings and chocolate, stating that it was for the princess. After that, he asked Siana to take care of him today, and the girl could not disobey his order. While she was brewing delicious tea, Aris decided to wait until the cake was already eaten with the tea. When everything was ready, the princess noticed that the dessert was very tasty, and she thanked her brother. The little girl then stated that it was unfair to pay for her confirmation with 2 cups of tea. Therefore, she asked her brother to fulfill her request again, and explained that she had recently dropped the maid's hairpin into the water. His Majesty understood what his sister wanted and promised that he would fulfill it for her, and Siana, hearing this, was even a little surprised. Soon the servants drained the water on the fountain so that the bottom could be seen, and then began to look for the lost thing. Choo-Choo couldn't believe that 100 soldiers were working for this, but Chiana assured her that it was. And before that, the maid had received another confirmation from the prince, as she needed to sew new clothes for Eris. To do this, she needed high-quality fabrics, and when the storekeeper saw the prince's seal on the letter, he was very surprised. As a result, she managed to do this too, because she knew that maids must have excellent endurance, and the girl patiently took care of it. That evening, as Siana was carrying the fabrics back, she felt like someone else was pushing her from behind to help. But when I turned around, I saw that Emperor Rashid was standing behind me and at the same time smiling sincerely. The girl immediately apologized and greeted him because she did not know that it was him, and he wondered why there were so many things on the cart. At the same time, His Majesty asked the maid to raise her head and explained that he only wanted to help her, but she did not understand why. Rashid then explained again that she herself was very small and the carriage was too big, so he decided to help. After telling all this to her friend, Siana decided to say goodbye, as she was worried that the princess would look for her. But then Chuchu confessed to her that she suspected that the crown prince had some psychological problems and was definitely crazy. She added that the life of a low-ranking maid is worse than an ordinary fly, and whatever it is, they are just manpower. Chuchu also admitted that she was worried because next to Siana, Rashid could lose his mind, and she should also get a job in the Ruby Palace. But the former princess believed that her friend, although very talented, was unlikely to be sent there, although she could become an official maid. When the girls were about to say goodbye, Aris came up to them and asked why Siana was taking so long since she was already hungry. The maid reported that she had prepared a snack for the princess before leaving, and she explained that she had eaten those 10 cookies immediately. The little girl then took the maid's hand and asked her to come back as she was really hungry. As she left, Aris grinned at Chuchu, so Siana didn't think that another maid would be sent to the Ruby Palace. Already in the palace, the princess assumed that the maid liked this Chuchu so much because she was big and muscular. The girl explained that she was one of the students and added that she liked her because she was very kind and sympathetic. Siana also confirmed that Chuchu is really strong and can carry several bags on one hand at once. After that, the princess asked the maid to cook meat and milk today, saying that she was no longer small and it was time to change her diet. The girl noticed that this little girl was quite cute when she was angry, but then she heard a familiar voice behind her again. The emperor and his servant approached them, and the princess immediately asked why he had come here again. Rashid explained that he wanted to know how they were doing here, but the girl explained that after 5 of his visits, it was enough for him to go here. Then he handed her a dessert and explained that it was a sponge cake with whipped cream made of high-quality white milk on top. This cake is also decorated with fresh fruit, and the prince also brought tea with him again. Aris was fond of sweets and decided that since he had brought a cake with him, he could stay at the house this time. Rashid asked Siana to be careful, and it seemed to her that he was suspiciously friendly. Still, she invited the guests to go inside, while still thinking that the emperor had really gone mad. The guard, entering the building, looked around as if he had noticed someone, but did not see a man in a hoodie hiding around the corner. It was his sister who had decided to watch him, and now saw that her brother had gone to the Ruby Palace again. She then went to the 5th princess named Yvette and reported that the prince had taken a lot of sweets for Princess Aris this time. She was just angry that His Majesty continued to visit this place, and she was very annoyed by it. With her at that time was the 5th wife of the emperor, Leovisuen Diaro, who believed that the baby was a poor child in the family. But Yvette was still dissatisfied because she was higher than her in title and did not understand why she did not deserve all this. The princess did not understand why Rashid was so friendly with Aris, because this girl is very pathetic. Then she decided that in order to attract her brother's attention, she had to meet this girl in person. Then she wrote a letter to this sister, explaining that she wanted to meet and have a heart-to-heart talk over tea. Aris realized that Yvette had decided to attack her on the sly, and this annoyed her greatly, which she shared with the maid. Siana decided that she was torturing the little princess, and she understood that when they met, she would only giggle and discuss her clothes. But the girl also understood why, because she did not know any rules of etiquette and considered herself only an empty shell of a princess. The maid told her not to think so, saying that she was with her and had promised that she would prepare Aris for tea. Siana was about to tell the princess everything and immediately reached out to get a few books, but the girl did not understand what it meant. Also, Aris could not understand how an ordinary maid knew about all this, and she explained that she was the princess's personal maid. Until now, Siana had thought that this girl didn't want to study, but she needed to know at least the minimum etiquette at the table. She needed it. Otherwise, she simply would not survive in the imperial palace, and she began to explain that until the owner began to drink tea, tea could not be drunk. In addition, you need to drink tea without noise, and as soon as he takes a sip, the cup should be immediately put on a plate. There shouldn't be any sound either, and Princess Eris thought it was all too complicated. However, she tried to do it, and to her surprise, she succeeded, for which the maid immediately praised her. After that, the girl practiced thanking for being treated to delicious tea, and again received praise from her teacher. Siana was glad that the girl listened to her attentively, and everything turned out perfectly for her, because she was a quick learner. For greater encouragement, the maid also began to call the princess a genius, which she was delighted with. At the same time, unlike the nobles who are prone to praise, the royal family must be arrogant so as not to be ignored. In the meantime, an uninvited guest came to them in the person of the emperor, who immediately noticed that his sister now drank differently. His Majesty saw well that some of Eris's mannerisms had changed, and then he looked at the maid and realized that it was her doing. Siana hoped that the crown prince would not notice, and she felt a little uneasy about what he had noticed. After all, the maid was indebted to the princess, so she believed that she would cope and was determined to have a good result. Soon, the etiquette training was completed, and the next day, Siana decided to decorate the little lady's dress. Aris was surprised that the maid had made the dress for her, and she admitted that she wanted her to look perfect. The maid hoped that the princess liked it and asked how she felt in the new outfit. The girl just turned in front of the maid, wondering how she looked from the outside, and then both went to get ready. By this time, Yvette was already waiting for them, who thought that her younger sister would be in rags as always today. She remembered reproaching Eris for eating with her hands and thought she looked like a vile commoner. Now Yvette thought that everything would be exactly the same, and she would be able to mock her sister again, which made her feel good. Little Eris, however, was gone for a while, and the fifth princess was even bored with the wait, but was angry that she had not yet appeared. But then she heard a child's voice behind her, thanking her for inviting her to tea. Turning around, she couldn't believe her eyes that the little scumbag now looked like a princess. At the same time, Siana added that Aris looks very beautiful, like a fairy from mythical fairy tales. She was just proud of her beauty, and was sure that she was beautiful because she looked like her mother. The maid repeated again that she would be the prettiest at the tea party, and that she would be able to win the battle by attracting all eyes. Seeing her sister's dumbfounded look, Aris asked what was wrong, while smiling sweetly as if to annoy Yvette. At the same time, the girl remembered the maid's instruction that she should continue to smile, because in the door, the smile always wins. Aris also noticed that her sister was all pale, but she only explained that she was pleased to see her after a long time. At the same time, Yvette was even funny to see how this little girl was trying to play the role of a princess, yet she invited her to the table. The fifth princess admitted that she had a lot of news, and also noticed that her sister now looked like a human. At the same time, in her mind, she tried to guess where the monster she had seen last time had gone. Then she saw how scrupulously the maid was taking care of the girl, and decided that all these changes were because of her. But Yvette told her sister that she was glad that she had finally grown up, and then dismissively gave the order. She showed that her cup was empty, and demanded to be refilled, and the maid came over to pour some tea. Only Yvette protested, and explained that it was not the maid who should pour, but her sister. The girl remembered that although she had studied etiquette, she had not yet taken lessons about serving tea. Eris realized that her sister was trying with all her might to find a flaw in her, but still took the teapot in her hands. The baby also understood that if everything continued like this, then she would have no other choice, and now she needed to take everything into her own hands. Then she knocked over the cup of tea in the direction of Isveta, who immediately jumped up in amazement. Eris only politely apologized and explained that her hand had suddenly twitched, but she began to scream that she had hurt her. And now, as an older sister, Yvette was about to punish the little prankster and waved her hand at her. But then a maid intercepted her, standing over her like a cloud, and asked her to stop it, and Eris only watched from behind her. The fifth princess was shocked by such an act of the servant, and she began to ask for forgiveness of her sister because she saw that she had framed her. Siana also added that no one has the right to punish the royal family without an order from His Majesty, and this is the law. Yvette was angry that despite the fact that she was higher in title, the maid decided to read the rules from the family to her. This was only a formal rule, and no one really adhered to them, so the weak should be trampled on without much attention. Yvette knew well that no one had thought of this discipline, and now a maid decided to point it out to her. Still, she admitted that this girl was very smart, so although her sister had learned manners, it was the maid who needed to be thanked. She then molested Xian for daring to touch the royal family, and declared that she now deserved to be punished. Then her maid came up and began to shout that this maid had decided to humiliate a member of the royal family. Then she pushed Ziana to the floor, who only thanked her for teaching her the rules. Stunned, Eris didn't know what to say, especially since she was only a child. But in the end, they decided to leave this place. In pursuit, the fifth princess shouted that she hoped to see each other again and asked her sister to just keep quiet. When Siana and the baby got into the carriage, the maid asked why the maid had done this. But the maid did not understand what the girl was asking. The little princess understood that the maid suffered because of her, since she took all the blow on herself. Still, this girl protected her, and then Aris suggested that she treat the wound first. When they arrived at the palace, Eris dipped her scratch with a moistened swab, and she realized that the princess had never done this before. The girl was embarrassed, but Siana assured that everything was fine and decided to teach the baby how to treat the wounds correctly. The girl explained that first the tampon needs to be disinfected, and only then dip the wound with it. Then she noticed that the princess began to cry, and assumed that she was simply angry because of what had happened today. She admitted that not much, but Siana explained that Aris was a full-fledged princess like Yvette, so she did not need to be afraid. At the same time, the maid added that all means are good, and asked if the baby wanted to punish her older sister. Eris agreed, but she was worried about her maid, who asked her not to worry. Siana promised that she would teach everything and show exactly how to do everything, because she already knows the princess very well. Then she asked the baby why this happened, and she assumed that it was because she was younger than Yvette. The girl herself could not believe that all this was due to her age, and she had such a low title, and Siana wondered how to determine the title. Eris explained that this is the difference between having something or not having it, while Yvette has power, wealth, and support, just like her. Then the maid repeated her question to her again, so that the girl herself understood why this had happened. Aris realized that she had a mother, and then Siana added that in order to gain more power, she needed to lure adults to her side. The maid also explained that this is the fastest and most realistic way, and so the princess will be able to influence royal power. The maid also promised that she would always fully support her, but she needed to find a person with great strength. The girl did not know how to find him, and Chiana suggested that there was one way, and there was a high probability that he would take her side. At this time, the guard reported to the emperor that the maid had gone somewhere and people had singled out how she got out of the carriage. Saul also suggested that she had gone to see Princess Yvette, and then Rashid was angry that he had not been told about it yet. The guard stopped him, explaining what could happen if he intervened in the confrontation between these two princesses. He also added that Siana could also suffer in this case, and Aris is her mistress, while she is a contender for the throne. Sol also added that the crown prince is a strong candidate, so the princesses are unlikely to apply. He also explained that even his mother would like this, and he said that although Sul was an old friend, he would not listen to this nonsense. Then the guard apologized to His Majesty for his words, and Rashid thought that Siana still sincerely cared about Aris. Still, he was very interested in why he cared so much, and remembered that when he was still a teenager, he was already a strong candidate for the throne. And no matter how much people supported him in everything, there was one person in the empire who was much stronger than him. It was Empress Goldria, and because of this woman, his power didn't make any sense. At this time, Siana also explained to the princess that the strongest person was Empress Goldria. It was her girl who needed to be lured to her side, but she had no idea how to do it. She knew she wouldn't want to meet, but Siana explained that they would create a situation in which Goldria herself would want to meet. The girl shared that the Empress had another daughter, but she died of poisoning before reaching the age of 10. The current emperor was poisoned with the same poison, and it is said that the young princess accidentally swallowed it and died. And instead of mourning her dead daughter, Her Majesty decided to cover up this incident. Naturally, she punished those who tried to kill her daughter and son, and she used this to eliminate political opponents. In the end, she strengthened the prince's associates and made him the current emperor, but that was not all. Siana suggested that although Goldria seems to be a heartless person, there is a longing for her daughter in every heart of her mother. This woman distanced herself from her own son because of this, and then over time completely withdrew into herself. The girl was already imagining how the old empress was brought news of the little princess. And although Aris was still sure that it was hopeless, Siana continued to assure that this was a great chance for them. She then asked the little girl to write a letter stating that she missed her mother. Soon this letter was delivered to Her Majesty Goldria, but when she read it, she immediately tore it in half. But the Ruby Palace did not give up, and soon Eris sent another letter to the Empress. Goldria, without even reading it, ordered it to be thrown away immediately, and she did the same with the next few others. The girl continued to write, realizing that even if she was constantly rejected, she did not stop hoping to meet her. In the end, the Empress decided to read a message from the little princess. According to the plan made by Siana, the letter also had a peach aroma, which was a little childish. The girl knew that Goldria was a man of that time, so it would be better to use more elegant phrases. But she asked Eris to write to the Empress as a granddaughter who thought she looked like a spring flower. Although the girl was still small, she did not understand how elderly people could like this. Siana only asked for patience, and soon they received an answer in the style of the great poet used by the Empress. The maid was very glad that their work on the letter was not in vain, and finally justified itself. Eris still begged the maid not to wail so loudly and asked how long it would take them to write these letters, thinking it was stupid. The girl asked the princess not to worry, and was more than sure that the Empress would soon definitely call her to her. She also noticed that she was writing like Ruby Palace, and Goldria was asking the maid what the princess looked like. Maid Siana was still waiting for an answer, and then Eris hurried down from the top floor in her new dress. The next moment, the girl hooked and rolled down, sprawled under the stairs, and Siana was afraid for her. The maid did not understand why she was in such a hurry, and the princess only began to hand her the envelope. The maid did not quite understand what this letter was, and then Eris explained that her grandmother had invited her to the palace. Soon they were ready and arrived at the meeting of the Empress, where the princess politely thanked her for the invitation. Goldria only greeted her granddaughter in a somewhat dry voice, but it was obvious that she was not happy with her. Then the girl approached her and explained that she had prepared a small gift for her as a sign of gratitude. Taking out a small bottle, the princess explained that these are tea leaves made from acacia flowers. Eris had heard that the Empress loved flower teas, so she made it especially for her. Then the little girl modestly asked her grandmother to accept this gift if she was satisfied with everything. Goldria noticed that the girl really looked alike and saw that she had purple eyes like His Highness. Eris was the youngest of the family, but those eyes betrayed her royal blood. Then the Empress admitted that this was a unique gift and then invited her granddaughter to drink a cup of tea with her. Soon, when they were already sitting at the table, Her Majesty noticed that the tea was really very tasty. The princess thanked her and was very glad that her grandmother liked it, and then they continued their conversations. As in the letters they sent, Eris did not complain about her life and praised the Empress. At the same time, their conversations were a little meaningless, but the appearance of both of them was quite extravagant. They both silently set down the cup, stirring tea with a spoon, and the corners of their mouths were slightly closed as they drank. Court etiquette was perfect and there was nothing to complain about. Eris even sometimes covered her mouth during conversation. Also, the girl read poetry in a thin voice while maintaining her posture, and all these things were learned for this day. Eris also noticed that the flowers in the garden were very beautiful, and Goldria decided that she would give her any she liked. The princess was very happy about this, and she thanked Her Majesty again, while smiling sweetly. The Empress also remarked that it was a very beautiful child, and then she stated that a long time had passed and asked her to go to her room. The princess looked embarrassed and began to apologize for taking up a lot of Her Majesty's time. The little girl then thanked her once more and was about to return to her palace, hoping that everything would go well. At the same time, Goldria remembered how her daughter also apologized for taking up her time and then leaving. At the same time, the Empress's child always smiled good-naturedly at her, and she would never forget that smile. Her Majesty was also very sorry that her girl had lived so little, and it had tormented her all these years. And then she looked at little Eris again, and again she was convinced that she looked very much like her. Returning to the palace, Siana noticed that the princess was thinking about something and wondering about something. She explained that it used to seem to her that the Empress was a person without tears and blood, but now she saw that this was not the case. The maid now noticed that the princess's character had changed a lot, and she was playing such a sweet child that it was difficult to help smiling. Still, there was one problem: guilt, and if it hurt Eris so much, then it was better not to do it again. Gianna asked if the girl felt guilty for deceiving the Countess, and she admitted that she did not have such a feeling. Eris explained that while they were together, she had never asked anything about the princess during the entire conversation. But a girl who has lost her mother must be at least somewhat interesting, for example, with her beauty or level of knowledge. But for Goldria, it was much more important how much the baby resembled her late daughter. If that woman knew her real woman, she would never smile so sweetly at this little girl. Therefore, the princess feels in relation to her grandmother only that she wants to send her to hell. This even made the girl a little angry, but when she calmed down, she asked the maid how well she had done today. Siana admitted that the baby did everything perfectly and she was proud of her, and from such praise, Eris rushed to hug the servant. The maid herself at this time realized that instead of finding support for the princess, she made her lose herself. She also now felt that this was too cruel a plan, but she had no other choice. She had recently met His Majesty again late in the evening in the garden and immediately thanked him for his help. The girl explained that, thanks to him, she was able to achieve what she wanted, and then she decided to ask him something. Sion wanted to know something about the dead daughter of the emperor's mother, and he simply could not refuse her. So the girl learned about the countess's daughter from the crown prince, and the empress's memories are associated with what the deceased princess looked like. Also that she loved the smell of acacia, what color dresses she liked to wear, and what poems she liked to read. All this would greatly affect the feelings of the empress, and it was enough to evoke feelings in a mother who had lost her child. This is how Empress Goldria will be able to helplessly fall in love with a fake copy of her deceased daughter. Siana asked the prince how she could repay his help, but he said that she did not need to do anything. The only thing that interested him was how, among all the people in the palace, she had chosen Empress Goldria. Rashid then clarified that it was just a question and he was really just curious. Siana admitted that at the time when she was trying to survive as a powerless princess, this was her plan. The girl thought that she could find support, so she began to study information about the imperial family. As now, she wanted to take advantage of the empress who had lost her daughter, and these plans were similar. Thinking about it now, Sion realized that she didn't have a chance to contact the empress from such a long distance. Therefore, she was not suitable for such a role, but with the help of His Majesty, she was able to reach the empire. Now, Princess Eris managed to carry out this plan instead of her, and all thanks to the emperor. Rashid wondered if she blamed him for all this, but she admitted that she blamed the family who bullied her. But instead of depression, she was constantly thinking about how to escape, and now she is absolutely happy. The emperor found it very unusual that the girl did not blame the murderer of her family, but on the contrary, rejoiced. In addition, her face seemed very cute to him, but at the same time there was something cruel about it. Now Siana knew that if her plan was successful, then she had to move on to the next step. Soon Yvette received another letter from her little sister and decided that she had gone mad. After a while, she visited her, and Aris thanked her for accepting her invitation, becoming her guest at the tea party. Yvette was genuinely surprised, because 3 months ago this girl looked like a beggar, but now she had changed a lot. Then the 5th princess asked for tea, and explained that this time she wanted a maid to serve her. Yvette also reminded the maid that she had made a mistake last time, and now she wondered if she realized her mistake. She knew that this was just a low-ranking maid, and she thought that she would be able to injure her easily. Siana poured the guest tea just flawlessly, and then she decided to find fault. She looks at her so honor. The maid only apologized, but the 5th princess continued to claim that she was just staring at her. Yvette then thought that the maid was angry with her, but Yvette insisted that she was not. Then the princess explained to the little sister that she needed to teach this maid a lesson since she had not been able to receive it last time. Then she ordered the whip to be brought, but then Aris demanded that her sister stop, and she would no longer forgive if she touched Ziana again. Yvette was only angry and did not understand why the baby hoped for her grandmother's help and now dared to behave like this with her. She admitted that she knew everything, and then decided to share with the girl what she did not know yet. Yvette wondered why Aris thought she could rely on the Empress, even though she was His Majesty's biological mother. She also explained that the one on whom the girl relies has not had any power for a long time, because the Emperor has not communicated with her for a long time. The 5th princess admitted that as soon as Rashid took the throne, it was known to everyone, but not to little Aris. She also couldn't wait to see the one who didn't have long left, and she thought that the little girl was just stupid to choose someone who flattered her. Then Her Majesty came up and was surprised that such dirty words came from the little lady's mouth. Yvette was simply dumbfounded, and for a moment she was speechless, not understanding why the Empress was there. Aris immediately rushed to her grandmother and tried to explain something, and she asked what had happened here. The baby explained that she was holding her first tea party and invited her sister, but decided that she had done something wrong and admitted that now she was ashamed. The little princess then also pointed out that there was no adult in her palace who could teach her properly. The empress looked at the girl, realizing that she had no mother, and promised that she would help her. While Yvette was thinking about how Goldria had decided to come here, Goldria began to reproach her for insulting the child. She shouted that the fifth princess really looked down on the baby, and that Eris herself was a virgin child. Then Her Majesty took the whip and immediately walked over the hands of the impolite princess. She had heard that Yvette was trying to punish the maid and decided to show her how to handle it. At this point, the fifth princess of the Stazza declares that she is a descendant of His Majesty, so Goldria cannot touch her without the permission of the emperor. But Her Majesty did not understand how this girl dared to threaten her with her own son, and this made her angry. The empress said that Yvette could ask anyone how they would react to this. Even if her son is against her decision, he still won't turn a blind eye to his sister's disgusting behavior. Then she ordered Yvette to hurry up and lift her dress, and she could not disobey the order. The next moment, she received a slap on the ankles, which she could not resist and cursed, calling Goldria a crazy old woman. After that, she received another slap, even more painful, and began to shout that her mother would not leave it to her. She just appeared here at that moment and immediately asked what was happening here. But when she saw the empress, she only thanked her for personally taking care of her daughter's education. She then appealed to Yvette to thank the Dowager Empress immediately. The fifth princess couldn't believe it. She really couldn't think that things would turn out like this. Nevertheless, she bowed to Her Majesty and, thanking her, admitted that she herself was to blame for everything. Aris soon rejoiced that her sister had been so helpful, even though she had made her sweat beforehand. Siana was also glad that she had asked her for help before leaving, but she wondered if the baby was okay. She admitted that she wanted to ask her something. She wondered why her mother was forced to die. The girl learned from the records that when she asked for help, no one helped her. Her mother was very ill at that time, but the doctor refused to come to examine her for some reason. Aris did not dare to ask her grandmother about it now, realizing that she needed her very much, and the princess would not ask such questions. Siana noticed that the baby was very sad, and explained that there was nothing wrong with her crying now. Shiana had hoped that Eris's heart would not be broken, but there was still a wound that could not be healed. The girl, still crying, shouted that she hated everyone and wanted everyone to die, and the maid decided that the plan had failed. Earlier, the subject who seduced the emperor not only received favor, but also became a member of the imperial family. At that time, she was already pregnant and was worried that the emperor's mother would turn away from her, like everyone else. After Goldria stated that she wanted nothing to do with His Majesty, Rosemary gave birth to a child. She was a beautiful princess, and the palace was decorated with precious stones and crowded with people. The palace at that moment was very different from reality, and Rosemary apologized to her daughter that in fact it was only hypocrisy and malice. Now that the palace was a battlefield, Siana wanted to take advantage of the man who had killed the princess's mother. She understood that the baby did not have to have warm feelings for her, and now she hugged the girl, whom she felt very sorry for. Then Eris herself hugged the maid and asked what her plan was, explaining that she was going to use this old woman to the end. The maid understood that although it would be sophisticated and cruel, they would increase the power of the princess and the emperor's mother. After a while, Goldria was worried that after that tea party, her granddaughter did not come to her anymore and decided to visit her herself. When she arrived at the Ruby Palace, the maid reported that Princess Aris had been poisoned. The Empress immediately rushed to her granddaughter, and Siana added that the baby had received a dessert as a gift, which had been poisoned. Still, the poison was not fatal, and the effect would not last long, and the doctor assured that the girl would soon recover. However, the princess's body is very weak and there is no improvement yet, and Siana also admitted that she could not contact Her Majesty. The maid began to apologize, but the Empress asked not to do this, realizing that it was her own fault. And then she hugged the baby and asked her to get well quickly and not worry about anything. This news reached Yvette, who was even glad that her sister could not even get out of bed. She stated that this was because she began to be impudent, and explained that this happens to those who try to instill fear in her. While she was sharing this with her mother, a maid came in and reported that the emperor's mother had given her a gift. Goldria asked to tell her that this was for her beloved granddaughter, and also that she wanted to forget about what had happened together. In fact, this dessert was a warning that all of Yvette's actions would come back to her. There was also a request from the Empress that the princess eat every last bite as she put her soul into this dessert. Heeding Her Majesty's warning, Yvette and her mother disappeared forever from the history of the imperial family. After that, Goldria often visited Eris and took care of her so that she could recover quickly. The girl explained that she was already much better and there was no need for the Empress to visit her so often. Her Majesty understood that the girl should rest and promised that she would visit her a little later. Eris found the tea bitter, and the maid explained that it was because medicinal herbs had been added to it. The princess did not understand why she was behaving as if she were terminally ill, and she explained that poisoning was really serious. Aris stated that she only had a slight upset stomach, explaining that it wasn't the first time Yvette had sent her something like this. The girl also admitted that she usually just threw everything away, but now she decided that she could use it to her advantage. Aris also wanted to use her grandmother for her own pleasure, and when the moment came, she would wonder why she didn't help her mother. At the same time, the baby thought that she was bad, but she was still glad that now everything turned out this way. And the maid explained to her that it was simply impossible to survive in the imperial palace while remaining good. After that, the princess hugged her maid again and began to ask her never to leave her. At that moment, Siana remembered again how she had asked Rashid what she could do for his help. Although he explained that nothing was needed, the girl continued to insist, but he did not know what to ask for him. Then he suggested to the maid that she move into his palace, and Shiana was at a loss for a moment, not knowing what to say. After a while, 2 twin maids came to them, who brought several dresses for the princess to try on. Siana looked at it and decided that pink would suit Aris, but blue would look even better. The maid was even a little confused, seeing that both outfits were very beautiful, and now she could not decide which dress was better. But then the princess came out and ordered the maids who had come not to bother her maid. They agreed, and then began to ask Aris herself which dress she liked the most. The girl said that everything would look good on her, no matter what she wore, and the dressmakers agreed with her. They even wondered how she could be so smart at such a young age, and Aris confirmed that she was quite intelligent. When they left, the princess became angry, saying that she hated all women except Siana. But the maid explained to her that in order for them to stay together for a long time, they would need the help of other people. She also explained that this is in case the princess needs something and she is busy, or just in case. Siana then promised that she would find maids who would love the baby as much as she did. After that, those twins named Nini and Nana were sent to the palace, where they would work from that day on. They swore that they would serve the princess faithfully, and Siana explained that they could be trusted, since they were friends of Choo-Choo. But the girl did not like that they looked the same, because she would not be able to understand who was who. As the days passed, the new maids never ceased to admire the princess, declaring that she was beautiful and elegant. They also took good care of Eris, explaining that she should maintain health and nobility. Siana was happy that everything was going well, and the princess was growing up quite a confident girl. She herself was going to visit the prince, where a dessert was prepared for her since she was considered an honored guest. The maids were so pledged to take good care of her until His Majesty the Emperor came. The maid, meanwhile, looked around and noticed that the high ceilings made the living room look more like a garden. It seemed even stranger to the girl that she, an ordinary maid, was now entertained like an honorary aristocrat. Soon His Highness arrived, who appeared with several of his pets and smiled sweetly. Siana confessed to him that he looked strange, but Rashid explained that he was just walking with his cute children. He also admitted that because of this he was delayed, and now he was going to greet the guest properly. After that, the emperor stood up, and bowing slightly, expressed his gratitude for her coming to his palace. But the girl asked him to speak directly, and not to hesitate to ask her for something in gratitude for his services. Shiana explained that the princess was waiting for her, and then the emperor decided to get to the point and explain what he needed. Then Rashid, smiling, added that he really wanted to feed the maid with dessert, and handed her a piece. The girl was surprised that this was all he wanted, but she let her put a piece in her mouth, and the taste seemed beautiful to her. The prince explained that the dessert is made from high-quality ingredients, and there is also a flavor of fruit. Siana thought that the palace had a very skilled cook, but Rashid admitted that he had cooked it all himself. The maid choked on this, and the emperor decided that she did not like it, but she explained that she was just very surprised. Then His Majesty admitted that he liked to cook, and that he could also spend time with Siana. Now the girl could not even believe that this was what the crown prince looked like, who was believed to be a man without tears and blood. His Majesty also admitted that he really likes small animals because they make you rejoice just by looking at them. And Siana, looking at His Highness at this time, remembered a story and decided to share it with the prince. She told about the princess of the Winter Kingdom, who, despite her magnificence, could not stand the cold at all. This princess could not get out of the bedroom with the fireplace lit, and then a bird flew to her, which took pity on her. The bird wanted to cut off a piece of the sun and give it to the princess, and soon the girl received this gift. That cherished ray of sunshine soon helped the princess find a way out of the room. The emperor could not believe that this could be true, but the maid assured him that it was. Siana also admitted that this fairy tale is from her hometown, and then she wondered how the prince knew this story. His Majesty admitted that when he was still a child, he was told by a person, but unfortunately he does not remember the narrator. Rashid thought that this was the only clue, but over time he realized that he was wrong. On the way home, Siana still could not understand how the prince knew this fairy tale because she had invented it when she was a child. At the same time, she told it to only one person, and she could not believe that it was the crown prince then. After a while, the girl met her friend Choo-Choo again and thanked her for sending her friends. Sina explained that thanks to this, she was able to save an entire hour, and also noticed that Choo-Choo had become an official maid. She considered herself just lucky, yet she understood that she was quite a capable worker. And while the rest of the maids explained what her triceps were for, she was invited to go to Princess Grace's palace. This princess was a member of the imperial family, and now Choo-Choo was a little at a loss, thinking that she was just a hillbilly. Then she remembered that there were also exams for promotion and noticed that Siana didn't know that. From her friend's reaction, Choo-Choo decided that she did not want to turn him in, but the maid explained that only a year had passed since her appointment. Then her friend began to assure her that she did not know anyone more capable than Siana and was sure that she would succeed. Choo-Choo also added that after that, the boundaries of her world will expand, and after passing the exams, she will have more powers. In addition, the salary would be raised, and Siana realized that then she and her friend would be able to eat whatever they wanted. But the girl was also happy that she would be able to buy beautiful gifts for Princess Eris. Siana also imagined that after she would be able to quit her job as a maid and open her own shop. The girl agreed, although she did not know how it would end, and when she came to the exam, she found out that her name was not there. The twins explained to Siana that this is because she is a foreigner and people like them are not recognized as mid-level maids. Despite her outstanding abilities and extensive work experience, she and several others were not promoted. Now they will have a hard time. They continue to be exploited forever. Besides, they received mere pennies. When Princess Eris found out about this, she was very angry that because of this reason, they did not pass the exam and said that she would challenge the decision. Only Sina began to ask her not to do this, because everything had already been decided, but the baby was still not going to give up. The maid insisted and added that Eris should not talk about this with her grandmother, as it could backfire on her. The girl began to ask the princess not to worry so much about her and explained that someday she would have a chance again. But soon this opportunity found her, but she failed the exam because her skills turned out to be too much. However, the examiner had one sentence for her, and she was going to ask the Empress Dowager. If everything went smoothly, then the teacher would be able to promote Siana to a mid-level maid. The Empress, compared to the Emperor's 4 lower wives, had no flaws at all. Each of these girls could have become an Empress, and now one of them asks Siana for a favor. The girl understood that, although this was a request, she could not refuse. And then the youngest wife named Angela came out to her. This lady looked much younger and more innocent than the maid had imagined, and immediately greeted the guest. Siana also did not wait, and bowing politely, she admitted that she was pleased to meet the mistress. Angela found out that the maid was 18 years old and noticed that she had excellent manners, although she began to work not so long ago. She also noticed that Siana was modest, as she had been told, and admitted that she was curious because she worked for Princess Ares. She then added that Goldria is now turning an abandoned child into the perfect princess. Angela then asked the maid to follow her, asking that what she saw should remain a mystery forever. A little boy was sitting in the room, playing with a robot, and the lady explained that it was her son named Lacey. She then asked the maid to take care of his training, without demanding that he be as gorgeous as Ares. Angela then asked Siana to think about her suggestion and give an answer, and she promised that she would think about it. She also noticed that this boy was different from the rest, while there was not a word about Angela's son in the records. With this question, she turned to His Majesty, hoping that he had heard something about this boy. Siana also added that this is the fourth prince of Lacey, and this year he will turn 12 years old. Since he lived outside the palace because his father was not interested in his children, there was not much information about him. The boy stays at the estate of Marquis Wilhelm for educational purposes, and there were also rumors that there was some kind of scandal with this wife of the emperor. The emperor thought that the boy had some problems that they wanted to hide, so they did not allow him to see him. Angela still did not allow her son to be seen, and no one had seen him in the palace since he was born. Still, the lady intended to officially introduce Lacey to the imperial palace when he turned 12. Now, Rashid understood that even if the maid was asking questions, then there was definitely something wrong with the boy. At the same time, he admitted that he was happy, as he thought that the girl came just to meet him. Ziana wanted to ask His Majesty something else, but he repeated that she should not worry about the fourth prince. The maid then stated that she still needed to think about it, as the boy needed her help. But in any case, she received some information from Rashid and wondered how she could repay him. He explained that Siana had already repaid him, and then added that Princess Aris would be worried. Later, the maid shared with the baby that she was offered to teach the prince, but she was immediately furious. She stated that she would never allow it, and claimed that as her only mistress, she would not allow her to leave her. Siana then explained that she wanted to become a mid-level maid, so she should take this chance. Lady Angela will be able to overcome the wall that she herself is unable to cope with because of her status. In addition, the maid would not allow rumors about how she would become a third-line servant, and then Aris decided to give her half a day. The girl admitted that she really did not want Siana to do this, but at the same time she did not want to take away such a chance from her. The maid thanked the princess, knowing that she would be able to do a lot more things later than she did now. Then the twins approached Aris, promising that they would not let her get bored with this time, but she did not like this idea. But the little girl was reassured by the fact that until Siana became a mid-level maid, she would continue to take care of her. At the same time, the maid understood that although she was not so strong in this, she would do everything to help the imperial wife. Angela was very glad that she agreed, but she understood that she was confused because of such a sudden request. The girl could not even believe that the mistress was thanking the maid, and then asked her to discuss all the details. Siana explained that the duration of classes will be 5 hours a day until the boy's birthday. If there are satisfactory results during this period, the lady will promote the maid to the middle level. Angela was a little surprised, as she had assumed that she would ask for precious stones in payment, but now she saw that she was more greedy. The girl explained that her greed is commensurate with the help she will provide to achieve better results. The maid then wondered why the prince had been in this state, and the emperor's wife decided to tell her everything from the beginning. As soon as the boy was born, the emperor was just delighted and praised his wife that she did a great job. After that, he declared that Angela would be empress, and Marquis Wilhelm would become more powerful than ever. The emperor was also going to give the child to the wet nurse, and his wife could rest for the time being. After a while, a maid came to her with a worried face and explained that His Highness had become somewhat strange. She explained that he never made eye contact or respond to his name, but Angela demanded that her son not be called strange. Angela appealed to the emperor, and he allowed her to rest and recover outside the castle. He also promised that he would cure their child at all costs, and his wife offered him to go together. But His Majesty said that then there would be rumors everywhere, and said that Prince Lacey should get well and get smart. The emperor also made it clear that the boy could return to the palace only when he became the perfect prince. And many years later, Angela accidentally saw her father trying to teach the boy himself and was very frightened. He only shouted at her for daring to come to the estate without permission. Angela felt that her father wanted to make a fool of Lacey at the first banquet, so he would never become emperor. The Marquis also told her that no matter what he did, the prince still did not understand anything and refused to behave like a human. The young lady was very worried, but she knew she had to find a way out. And a few days ago, she had come for Lacey. On that day, the moment came when she was able to take her son, but at the same time, she does not have the right to be called his parent. Her father, the Marquis, had promised that he would be back in time for Lacey's birthday, and she was afraid that he would find out that the boy had been there all along. Now Angela hoped for the maid's help, because when his father saw that the boy had become smarter, he would not blame her. The situation turned out to be more serious than Siana had expected. She understood that it was not easy for the mistress. But now the child comes first, and the maid promised that she would do everything in her power. Then she signed the contract and understood that all the more she had to try, and then asked where the prince was. Angela also explained that His Highness is very sensitive, while only noticing what is directly in front of him. But the biggest problem was that it was impossible to establish contact with him. Siana approached him and tried to talk, explaining that the weather was good today, and held out her hand to him. But the boy did not react much, and then the maid told the mistress that he was not sick, but was simply born this way. The girl also explained that since he is not sick, there is no treatment for him. Still, Siana added that there was a way to improve his condition a little, and although it would not be an easy path, it would help the mistress. Angela, although stunned by the news, was willing to do anything to make her boy feel better. At the same time, the lady was worried that she was used to always taking care of her son alone without a maid and never looked for help. Still, she herself asked Siana to take care of his training, but she did not understand why she was going to spend only 1 month with the prince. The girl explained that she had been training the princess for a long time, so she would share all the knowledge that could help. And Angela, although she accepts the help of a maid, should not give her child away because it is the mother who should be engaged in the upbringing. But she wasn't sure she could take care of him properly, and she was afraid that Lacey might not like it. Siana asked her mistress not to give up and not to give up, then everything would work out for her, and she would achieve a good result. Angela had promised the maid that she would try, but she was still worried, and even taking deep breaths didn't help her much. Then she went to her son's room to see what he was doing there, and he was playing with a toy as usual. The lady noticed that the cubes behind him were uneven, and remembering that Lacey didn't like things crooked, she decided to correct them. At the same time, the boy begins to get very angry when someone touches his belongings, and the mother asked him for forgiveness. She understood that he had worked hard to build this town, but she saw that he was still bored. Angela decided to pamper him with sweets, but he did not like sweets. He was also not comfortable talking for a long time. Lacey didn't even like to listen to music, as he didn't like loud noises, and then she remembered that he used to like to draw. The lady believed that the child should do what he liked, and hoped that now everything would be all right. She also recalled that when she was lonely and couldn't stop crying, only drawing helped her calm down. Though she didn't have any special skills, she thought it was fun, and now she noticed that Lacey was interested too. Soon, when the boy spent some time with a brush in his hands, he got a magnificent picture. Angela was simply delighted and considered him not just a genius, but a genius of the century, and that he had a talent that not many people were born with. She still could not believe that a child who had never been taught such a thing had painted such a picture. In addition, the boy was very focused at work and was not distracted by anything for half a day. But though it wasn't long, Lacey didn't look at his mother either. Then Siana explained to her that if the boy hated her, he would just get scared and run away. And the fact that he did not do this suggests that the prince is comfortable being next to her. But suddenly, Angela saw her son break the easel, and she was very frightened. But the maid explained that this was how he expressed his displeasure. Siana asked the mistress to take a closer look at the boy and noticed that he was not trying to harm himself or anyone else. Lacey was just annoyed, and the maid advised the mistress to come up to him and hug him. Angela agreed and believed that even if the prince did not understand her, he could feel her warmth and understand that she was on his side. Then she hugged the boy to show him her warm attitude, and with such a hug, he knew that it was his mother. Then Angela admitted that she had no idea that if you hugged him and comforted him, he would quickly calm down and become very affectionate. She admitted that she really did not know her son well, and that day the boy fell asleep quite early as he was exhausted. Angela then thanked the maid and allowed her to return to her room, who promised that she would come back tomorrow. Back at the palace, Siana learned that the princess was going on a picnic with the twins. Eris also noticed that the maid was tired and promised that she would pester her the next day after work. The girl followed them and was glad that the girl was pleased, and then she ran into His Majesty again. Rashid wanted to admit to her that he just missed her, but Sul corrected him, explaining that they had come for the tea leaves that had arrived a few days ago. He did not argue with his old friend, and then Siana offered to make them tea, and the prince asked the guard to take his animals for a walk. Saul understood what His Majesty was hinting at and did not argue, and the prince then asked how Lacey's training was going. Rashid admitted that he was just wondering if the maid would be able to do in 2 weeks what the Marquis could not do in 5 years. He explained that the child was unable to maintain eye contact, and he had heard that the child liked to scream like crazy. Siana explained that His Highness is not particularly stable yet, but he is already much better, and soon he will give everyone his smile. Rashid still did not understand why she was so sure of this, and the maid explained that she had already seen something like this. The girl admitted that her brother, her stepmother's son, was very similar to the prince, although his condition was even worse. He did not understand what was being said to him, and also did not particularly have talent. Like the prince himself, they even wanted to send him to a monastery first. However, then his condition improved, and this happened thanks to the great and sincere love of his mother. She believed that next to her, her son would grow up safely and be much happier than anywhere else. Now that Siana's brother is no longer in this world, she confessed that he was also cruel and tormented her and the other maids. Therefore, the girl decided to tell everything to His Majesty, and also admitted that she did not feel anything about the death of her family members. In any case, it was more important to her now that the prince's condition was improving every day. Siana also believed that at this rate, he would be able to carry himself with dignity by his birthday. A little later, Angela explained to her son that he should repeat after her, and if he succeeded, she would kiss him and give him new colors. Soon, the boy was able to repeat that he was the fourth prince named Lacey, and thanked everyone for having guests on his birthday. Angela was very happy that her son was doing well, and praised him for being so smart. Siana saw the results and admitted that the mistress had done a great job, and Lacey had done a great job. At the same time, the maid explained to Angela that that was all for now, although she objected because there were still 3 days before the holiday. Siana also explained that Prince Lacey is what he is, and he is real, while still too young and sensitive, and his mother was too soft to face so many people, and then Siana decided to offer her something. The girl explained that the banquet in honor of the prince's birthday should have been postponed for another year. But Angela was worried that if she didn't represent Lacey this time, he might lose his title. Then a frightened local maid ran into the room and reported that Marquis Wilhelm had arrived. The lady was very frightened, and he was already rushing inside and shouting that they should not dare to restrain him. The maids explained that in order to enter the Empress's palace, he needed permission, but he only drove the servants out. Without even greeting her, he approached his daughter and said that he had important business, and then asked where the prince was. Angela immediately began to explain that Lacey was alone in that estate, so she couldn't leave him alone. She then brought him to the imperial palace, where she took up his training with a talented maid. They were able to improve his condition, and Angela hoped that her father would appreciate it, but he also suggested that the banquet be postponed. He also added that if it didn't work, then it could be announced that the prince had died in an accident. Still, he couldn't do such a thing to his grandson, and he was glad that he didn't have to worry about this matter now. Then the Marquis asked his daughter not to worry because he himself knew how to help Lacey now. He explained that with the help of magic, someone would control the prince throughout the banquet, and she would be able to deceive the guests. The Marquis also explained that they simply have no other choice because this is the only way to meet the standards. He assured his daughter that this was only a temporary measure for the sake of the banquet, and then he would be able to start teaching him again. Now the Marquis was sure that he would be able to protect not only the honor of the family, but also the honor of Lacey as well. Angela still asked her father not to do it, explaining that it was no longer necessary, and she did not want to do such terrible things to her son. But he began to shout that she should realize the real state of affairs, because he himself did not want to resort to such measures. Then, entering the room, the Marquis saw the boy sitting and peacefully drawing a picture. But the grandfather was determined to take him with him, and he was not even stopped by the fact that his daughter fell at his feet in pleas. Angela was very afraid that something bad could happen to her son, but his father only pushed her aside. Then he grabbed the little prince and he, frightened, began to call his mother to protect him. But the lady could not but listen to her father. She always played the role of an obedient daughter, which she could not even remember now. She had to become the perfect lady in order to survive. When she was put on a corset, she did not have to utter a sound. Then she remembered how happy her father was that they had got the perfect companion for her, and that she would become the fourth wife of the emperor. But the truth was that Angela was just afraid and silently wanted someone's help. Now she understood that now she had to protect at least her child, and immediately rushed at the father so that he would let her son go. She demanded that he not dare to take him from her, and declared that from now on the prince would always remain with her. The Marquis noticed that his daughter was acting like an empress, and decided that he had been very polite to her. He then explained that, even after wearing the royal crown, she did not cease to be his daughter. The Marquis didn't like that when he decided to protect his family. Angela decided to rebel. After that, he slapped his daughter in the face, but then the soldiers approached him and said that he dared to touch a member of the imperial family. Siana immediately came up to Angela to calm her down and explained that these people were only trying to kick her father out of here. And she decided to immediately order the soldiers to throw this man into prison, and immediately. When the Marquis was already in prison, he shouted at the soldiers, declaring that his daughter was the empress of this country. He also stated that these soldiers, his daughter, and that vile girl would pay for it, for they had brought such shame upon him. Then he noticed that the same maid had come up to him, but he told her not to even try to beg his forgiveness. But Siana explained that she was not here to ask for forgiveness, but to convey the words of the mistress. The girl remembered explaining to Angela that she had prepared the guards in advance when she noticed that the Marquis was not in the mood. Then she immediately came as soon as she heard that this man was threatening his daughter and the prince. And since the maid witnessed this scene, the Marquis was caught red-handed and imprisoned. Angela then stated that she would no longer allow her father to manipulate her or her son. Then she asked me to tell him not to dare to come to the imperial palace again until she herself allowed him to do so. Angela also asked to tell her that she would now raise Lacey herself, but the Marquis was angry that her daughter had sent a maid for this. He demanded that Angela be brought here, but Siana explained that she was not only the empress, but also the prince's mother. Insulting her meant a blow to the authority of the emperor, so the Marquis is now considered a traitor. And if he does not want to bear the burden of betrayal, then he should follow Her Majesty's advice, because this may be his last chance. The Marquis decided to agree, knowing that there would be rumors that he could not control his daughter, but first he had to get out of here. Then the girl handed him a document that would show that he agreed to all the conditions, but the Marquis only got angrier. He still believed that Angela was weak and stupid, and would not have the courage to do this to her father. The Marquis knew that someone had bothered her, and then he guessed that it was the maid, and he was sure that without her, his daughter would not have done anything. He was also eager to find out how the banquet would go and how they were going to bring Prince Lacey out into the world. Wilhelm said that without his help, they would only ruin everything, and then regret it. Still, he signed the document and then left, and Siana reported this to Angela, for which she praised the servant. But now they had to take care of His Highness's banquet, and the lady said she would just cancel it. She knew that she would only have to endure people's sidelong glances and her father's wrath, and that was all. When the banquet was canceled, rumors immediately began to circulate that the little prince was crazy and could not go out in public. It was also said that he had been cursed by a terrible witch and even thought that Angela was going to abandon him. The aristocrats explained to her that the longer Her Majesty postponed her explanations, the more difficult it would be for her to renounce him later. They did not know how to help her with the prince and only continued to ask, convincing her that everything would be settled after that. But Angela asked them, despite the fact that her child is different from the others, to behave politely. She explained that her son was not crazy, but special, and then the aristocrats could not understand why she canceled the banquet. The lady explained that she was going to introduce Lacey to the world outside the imperial palace whenever he wanted. But the aristocrats told her that in this way she refused her duties, and then the prince would not be able to claim the throne. Only even despite this, Angela was still going to do just that, because she wanted her son to live a happy life. Then her friends understood everything and assured that they would take care of the rest themselves, and she thanked them. No matter what condition Lacey was in, no one would dare to ridicule the noble emperor's bloodline. In this way, the problem with the rumors was solved, but people still continued to whisper secretly. The aristocrats began to talk about how if His Majesty returned and found out about this, Angela's position would be in jeopardy. Siana assured Her Majesty that this would not happen, explaining that in the current situation, the rumors would have reached the emperor long ago. The girl added that if he is not there yet, then there is no need to worry so much. In addition, her financial condition has not changed. This meant that her family still supported her, and the rumors, as usual, would soon subside. Now Angela realized that for all that, she had entangled Siana in her problems, and in gratitude she said that she would fulfill what she promised. After thanking Her Majesty, the maid returned to the Ruby Palace, where she was immediately embraced by Princess Eris. The girl explained that she missed her very much and said that now she would never let her go again. The baby also admitted that she continued to study while she was away, but then asked that they still go on a picnic together. Aris dressed up specifically for this and looked so gorgeous that Chiana began to worry that she would not be stolen. They chose a place for a picnic in a secluded corner of the imperial palace, where it was quiet and very cozy. The maid was glad that the princess had finally got out of the palace, and she, in turn, was happy like a child. At the same time, the maids played with her, portraying various fairy tale characters so that the baby would have fun. Jumping and having fun in that clearing, Eris noticed a boy who was drawing a picture and asked what he was. At this time in Rashid's palace, he asked the guard when his father would return and found out that he needed some more time to recover. It had been almost half a year since the prince had been doing business on his behalf, and he knew that it was too long for a simple recovery. Saul also explained that the emperor had difficulties due to headaches, and his condition was deteriorating every day. At the same time, the guard assured that they should soon receive good news, and then Rashid invited him to take a walk in the fresh air. On a walk, he met the company from the Ruby Palace, but Aris, as always, decided that her brother was just following them. Then His Majesty saw that Angela was also there, which surprised him sincerely. The lady explained that she went out for a short walk with her son and accidentally met Princess Aris. Then Rashid noticed Lacey's gaze and thought that he was going to cut off his head. But Angela explained that the boy simply had not yet learned all the etiquette and asked to forgive him. Still, Rashid did not understand why he looked at him like that then, and the prince's mother explained that he just wanted to draw his relative. The lady added that Lacey, when she saw something beautiful, immediately wanted to draw it, and again asked him not to be angry with him. At this point, Aris jumped into the conversation and began to assure her that her brother's paintings were very beautiful. Then the girl remembered the first time the horses had seen each other, and Angela began to explain to the children who was who. Her Majesty was also very happy to meet Siana again, and she explained that they had gone on a picnic. Angela then thanked the little princess for giving them the opportunity to spend some time with Siana, and she helped a lot. After that, the Empress also promoted the twin maids to the middle level, considering it a mutually beneficial deal. Nini and Nana did not know how to thank their mistress, but she advised them to thank their friend for it. And then she asked Shiana what they could do for her as a token of gratitude, but she was just glad that they took care of Aris. They were still grateful because if it were not for her, they would continue to be exploited as laborers for pennies. At that time, the little princess noticed that Lacey was drawing, and he was very good at it. The boy confessed to her that he wanted to draw only beautiful things, and then Aris asked him to draw her. Soon the picture turned out to be simply magnificent, and it even seemed that the aroma of roses emanated from it. At the same time, the girl muttered that other members of the imperial family only knew how to swear, and Lacey was just a talent. Maid Siana couldn't help but confirm this, stating that His Highness's skills were truly incredible. Now Prince Rashid decided to ask the boy to draw him because he wanted to evaluate his younger brother's skills himself. Then Siana remarked that His Majesty liked to be a model, but he explained that he was just having fun. Rashid also liked that thanks to this maid, he could drink delicious tea while asking her to talk to him. He asked her what was so wonderful about drawing, and then the girl gave him a pen and offered to try it. His Majesty agreed and began to draw a portrait of Ziana, but he naturally came up with only a funny caricature. Rashid admitted that such an occupation does not suit him, and the maid explained that it is very important to realize what a person is good at. She explained that instead of putting everything off for later, he can simply give up and not do what he is bad at. Siana then added that people tend to get hung up on what they don't have, so she thought it was important to realize it right away. It's better to succeed at what is good than to worry about what is going badly. Rashid laughed merrily and understood why this girl had gone all this way from princess to maid. His Majesty also realized that she was much happier in this role, with which he congratulated her.